Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Friendly Differences podcast. Tonight's show was another really good show. It was a long one as well. It's two long ones in a row, but it's definitely a show that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I know it's titled the death of the mainstream media, but we did probably a good 30-40% of it was talking about the government and the voting system in America, which I love to talk about. I've heard throughout my journey the perspectives of the Ben Shapiro types, the Joe Rogan types about but actually hearing it from Americans like you, Solid, and our two guests. I can just sit back and listen to you guys. So, what did you think of the episode?
I thought it was a great show, and I must say, Scooter is being dethroned.
Oh,
Yes, you have asked me consistently what was my favorite show. I said the show is Scooter.
mhm.
Uh, I have to say that this one was Wolf and Bull. This is
Wow,
this is my favorite. This is
awesome.
this is my favorite. And Scooter, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to you're now tied for second because now I'm like, is it transgender I like
Yeah.
more or Scooter? But I still love you, Scooter. But this was a really good show. I totally enjoyed Wolf and Bull. Definitely want to have them back, and I'm glad that we were able to talk about just a myriad
Yeah.
of issues. I mean, we were we talked about some of everything, but it still came back to the media.
Mhm. Can I? I've just come off the episode there, and I was talking to my wife. She watched the whole episode, by the way, and loved it. She thought it was a really good episode. Something that I've battled with for a while, and this is probably a good opportunity to tell the listeners and yourself as well. But I'd like to know what you think. See how I struggle with my speech sometimes. Like I can't find the right word, or I'll stutter or something, and you get people like the bull and also the wolf as well was amazing, very eloquent, and use big words and all that. I find when I talk, I mean, I'm maybe being biased because I'm talking to a lot of Americans. When you get into podcasts here in the UK, there's a lot of American podcasters out there, and I find that maybe it's an American thing, like that you guys are very well spoken and very eloquent and enunciate your words. And in defense of myself, the reason I do it is I'm kind of battling against the slang. I'm from a town that uses words that are not in the dictionary. Every single word, like we call it Doric. It's like a slang, so it's like instead of saying I know, we would say I can, and instead of saying what, we say fit. So I'm consistently battling with myself to pronounce words when I really might. I really want to say the word that I would always have used. And what do you think about that? What
I
do you
don't
think?
think. I mean, I don't think that you should change, because I mean, most of the people who are on this podcast are from the, USA. So, if I were to come there, I would not change my speech.
Yeah,
This is the way I speak. So I think that if that's the way you speak, then that's the way
yeah,
you speak. And if I don't know what you're talking about, like the other day, you said busker. I did not know what that was. I asked
yeah,
you, and you told me, which I'm pretty sure that other people, I mean, I would have figured out when you kept talking, but
yeah.
I'm glad I did ask because other people who may not know, now they know what a busker is. So I don't think
Yeah.
you should change your speech or anything. I think you are fine. So
Mhm. I'm also trying to force myself into reading. So I bought a book last week because I've told people I could read a page, and then you could ask me, what did you just read? And I do not know. I think it's some form of like ADHD or something. I don't know what it is, but it seems to be common amongst people. But I'm going to force myself to start reading, and maybe that way some of these big words will set in, and I'll be able to put myself over a bit better. But as long as you understand me and the people at home,
I
that's
think I think yeah, I don't think you have to worry about that. And I do know that Wolf and Bull, they definitely they understood
yeah,
you. So
awesome.
yeah. And then again with the stuttering, I stutter all the time. So for that, I
Yeah,
that doesn't bother me, of course.
yeah, awesome.
So,
No,
but
it's
this
always
was
a nice thing to throw in there, and this whole learning process that we're on, and yeah. So this episode, I'll do the editing probably tomorrow because I'm off. I'm night shift this week again, so I've got all day tomorrow to put the episode together and upload some of the ones that we haven't. I've still got to post the audio onto Anchor and all that. So I
okay.
hope you guys enjoyed this one, and if you did, please let us know in the comments.
Please
We're-
comment. Yes, we see your views. And I don't even care if we don't even get any likes. Can we just get some comments,
yeah,
please? Please,
yeah,
comments. We want to know what you think, not just of us, but of the show and of our guest.
yeah,
So, but again, Wolf and Bull, thank you so much. I enjoyed you guys so much, and I definitely want you guys to come back.
yeah. And by the way, guys, we hit the 1,000 on TikTok, so we are going to be going live. Hopefully, I don't know, sometime tomorrow we might jump on and do a live, and try and incorporate those types of shows in there. So, thanks for whoever followed.
Live on TikTok. We
Yeah,
live on
yeah.
TikTok. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we'll see you on the next one, guys.
All right. And
Next one
we
is
hope you enjoy the show.
yeah. I hope you enjoy the show.
All right.
Bye, guys. Is it me to take lead?
Yes.
You're the lead. You're the lead dog. You're the lead ram.
Today.
Right. Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Friendly Differences podcast. Tonight we have special guests here. For anyone that's followed me on my Bar You podcast, you'll know these guys well. I only did an episode with them about 2 Saturdays ago, I think 2 weeks today. We covered chemtrails, the HARP, and a little bit at the end about the birds aren't real conspiracy theory. These are a couple of guys that I've connected with probably about 2 months now, and I've really enjoyed their shows and their outlook on life and their voices first and foremost. Once they open their mouth, you'll see what I mean. But tonight we've asked them on the show because they did a show. It was one of our more recent shows on the death of the mainstream, and I think that is a show that the Friendly Differences podcast would cover eventually. So what better time to do it? So yeah, tonight's show might be a lot of information. I might have. It's a bit different to the kind of shows we've done, but I still want to keep the chatty type back and forth feel to it. We might have, I've done a bit of research, and I know the guys have, and Solid as well on what we mean by it. But ultimately, I'd like the commentary, like the chattiness, to stay the same, and hopefully, also we're gonna utilize the share screen to maybe show some videos or a clip or two or whatever to back up what we're saying. But I'm interested to know everyone's feelings on the death of the mainstream media, and I kind of hope in a way that there is some pushback. Maybe it won't come from us on the chat, on the panel, but in the chat, we're also looking for your comments as well. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to my co-host, Solid Blue. How are you this evening?
I'm good. Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm definitely going to have some pushback because I know Bai is going to be pushing me that way when I want to go that way. so having said that, I'm not going to ramble on. I want the Wolf and Bull to introduce themselves, and whichever one of you guys want to go first.
Well, you introduced me first, so youth before beauty, right?
That's exactly.
So I'm the Wolf, also known as Cam in my day-to-day. Happy to be here. A little bit about our podcast. We really talk about, culture and social events. Kind of spread a lot between things. Bull, ain't that true?
We go all over the map. And I got to say, though, I have been seeing a lot of mechanical birds lately ever since that podcast bit.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's kind of like when you see a car that you drive.
That's exactly right. You buy a new car and everyone on the street has that car.
Oh yeah. Just mechanical pigeons.
Yeah. But we're very happy to be here today and spending some time with you guys. And we've seen some of the podcasts you've been on, and I mean the conversations are always fun to listen to. And having as the podcast says, friendly differences is real important these days, and maybe applies to what we're going to be talking about today. Maybe that's one of the reasons we see some of the mainstream media dying today.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So I don't know where we want to start, but usually we go around the room and give like a little opening statement on what we believe. I know I don't want to make this show like about left versus right, but because I'm from the UK, I do want to ask the question about American news, the mainstream media, Fox versus CNN. Do you feel that it is a left versus right on the death of the mainstream as well? Like, are the people on the left trusting of the media where the people on the right are not, or vice versa? Or is it that more and more people are waking up? I can only say from looking from the outside, again, being from the UK, that since Donald Trump took over as president, he did a lot to kind of expose the mainstream media. And I'm not giving him credit because I'm sure they've all done it. And it doesn't take one man to expose it. It's kind of pretty blatant to me. But he was the one that coined the phrase fake news, and he was always attacking, the CNNs and the news when he was ever doing a press conference. So I'd like to ask that question first and foremost to you guys, and then obviously my view on the news is I'd like to touch a bit upon the Smith-Mundt Act that was re-modernized in 2012 under Obama's administration, where I think it was 1948, the Smith-Mundt Act was put in place so that the American media couldn't lie to their own people. It was okay to do it to other countries, which again, have your own say on that. I think all lies is it's just lies and it shouldn't be allowed, but you can see the benefits of it. Maybe there is an argument for it. But in 2012, Obama's administration modernized it so that you could use propaganda against your own people. And to me, I've said it a lot on my shows where I think that is the one single-handed thing that if we were all to combine, to get together, left and right or whatever, we should fight that, because how can anyone be okay with their own media lying to them and being allowed to lie to them? So I'll pass the mic and see what your guys' thoughts are, whoever wants to take up.
Yeah, I think that maybe you hit on one of the subjects. The second part of what you talked about kind of is conflated these days, because you always have left and right. You always have polarization that's going on. You have different groups, whether it's Fox or CNN or any of the new technologies that are platforms that you can look at and see biases, right? And the things that we look at as individuals, as human beings, tend to be things that you lean toward anyway. Now, it's important to get feedback that you approve of, but I think it's even more important to get feedback that you don't approve of, to get a different sense of who's telling you what and for the reasons. And I think what it comes down to me is, you mentioned this thing back in Obama's era that about lying to foreign countries versus lying to your own. Well, I guess we have to really define what that is now. The lying part of it is what I mean, because if you go on any media platform, any cable news show, one of us could look at it and say, they're lying to me. And another of us could look at it and say, no, they're telling me the truth. The reality is there's always somewhere in between. There's a lot of gray out there, but it's a spin room. It's a massive spin room designed by people to get us to look at it, click on it, and buy things. That's kind of where I come from.
Yeah, I would probably align myself in that area as well. I'm maybe a little bit more hypercritical of the media. I believe in following the money, and a lot of these organizations are owned by, and we'll dive into this, but owned by 6 major organizations, all of which that do lean predominantly left. I don't have a problem with right or left. I find myself right in the middle as a libertarian. Obviously, I'm socially liberal on social problems and conservative on fiscal issues. But my biggest thing is, how can you have unbiased news if the parent companies of every organization leans predominant? And I'm not saying like small ones. I'm talking about like 70% and up on average, when it comes to their donations, when it comes to the way they spin things, when it comes to a majority of different issues. My issue being that I want news that's news. I don't want bias. And if it is bias, I want the organization to come out and say, hey, look, we lean left. Hey, look, we lean right. I mean, a big part of my perspective is I want people to be upfront with me early on so I can distinguish between what position they're going to take, because it's not rocket science. I mean, it's if you're looking at CNN, you know they're going to take the socially left position almost every time. If you're looking at Fox News, maybe 10 years ago, they would take the conservative right position. Now they're middling because they're owned by Disney. But I guess my point still remains is I'm skeptical of their positions primarily because the money goes in one direction predominantly, statistically.
Follow the money.
And it's not that I think that the left or the right has any better or worse position. I am of the position of any politician that's telling you something is probably trying to get something from you, so I don't like them anyway. But my biggest thing being, if one entity or a majority of entities that own most of entertainment are giving millions of dollars to one particular party, there's a reason why. And I wouldn't profess myself to be big business. I wouldn't profess myself to be a supporter of one-way politics. And I think that's kind of where we are right now, which is really weird. It's like a pseudo monopoly of power when it comes to news. I think it's odd. That's my position.
Okay. Well, Bob, you used the term expose, and I don't, I think the media does lean left, but I also think that the right media has done a lot of damage. And I don't think that Trump exposed anything. I think what he did was he allowed, some people like to use the word sheep. And I think that one group of people that are sheep are people who have bought into this fake news thing. And like you said, what is fake news? I can go to a website and look at this and it'll, say one thing. You can go to a website and pull something and it'll say something else. Who's to say which is right? In terms of what Obama did, while I disagree with what he did, the media has been lying to us anyway. So what difference does it make if he went and said, okay, whatever? So it's not that Obama did anything. We have been lied to, every single day, and I think that when cable news started, it gave people more reason to lie. So it all depends upon if you want to believe this person or if you want to believe that person. But when Trump came out and said, this is fake news, it seems like everybody, it seemed like he was the news person. And whatever he said, people are like, oh, yep, it's fake. But there's a lot of fake news on both sides. Yeah. And when I look at Fox, I see them doing things that polarizes people. When I look at CNN, I see the same thing. When I go to MSN and NBC, I see them trying to be the middle of the road. But the fact still stands for me is people are going to believe whatever they want to. They're going to watch something. They're going to take it away. I mean, even here, what we're doing now, people can buy into what we're saying, and they can go back and say, well, they said this, and it could, so it all depends.
So,
can I jump in?
Yeah.
Can I jump in and ask you, are you okay with that? Because I think you're kind of hitting on something that me and you have clashed, but maybe not actually got into, where I sometimes ask you, are you okay with that? Because I'm certainly not. I don't like that we have a Fox and a CNN and plus more, but they're the two main ones that I hear about here in the UK. Are you okay with them polarizing a certain, part of the population? Because
no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not okay with it. But the bottom line is, whether I'm okay with it or not, or you are, people are still, and I know you hate when I say this, but it's true. People are, in the end, people are going to do and listen to and think whatever they want, wherever they get their news, or if they're talking to their neighbor and never turn on a television set at all, they can buy into everything that their, next door neighbor says. So no, I'm not okay. But in the end, people are still going to listen to whomever they want to do, and they're continuously doing it, and it has become a huge problem. And I think the problem really became huge in 2016.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that. Just for the listeners, can I give an actual definition of fake news so we have like a baseline? So fake news by definition is articles that are untruthful on purpose. They have a purpose of misleading the reader to think one way. So I think when people look at Donald Trump, as you said, you think he didn't discover anything. I don't know if I agree wholly with that. I would say that he probably just showed up and said, oh, well, the fake news, there's the dead body. Here it is. That's what I think he did. I think, for the voting period of Donald Trump, he switched sides multiple times. He was a Democrat in 2001. In 2004, he did an interview where he said he was like, I'm predominantly Democrat in some things and I'm conservative in other things. So I don't particularly like him. I think he's funny. I think he said some really stupidly funny things. And from an ironic perspective and satirical perspective, I love it because it gives South Park so much ammo. With that being said, though, I don't agree with everything he has said. And I think that had he have shut down Twitter and not done any of that, he'd probably still be president today, in my opinion. With that being said, though, I look at him and I look at Obama and I see two people that are very similar on opposite ends of the coin, right? They're on the same side of the coin. They say polarizing things. Early on in Obama's administration, he was very change and everyone's together. And then all of a sudden the demonize the police thing kind of came in, which led to some of the stuff that's been going on in 2020 and forward. I think that there has been a viewpoint from politicians to utilize the mainstream media on both ends as a bludgeon. It's no longer a form of medium that I can look at and say, okay, I'm going to go to CNN, the most trusted news network, and get information from them that's going to be, as open-ended to both sides as possible. I can't do that with Fox, can't do that with MSNBC, can't do that with ABC, can't do that with anybody, not because they don't want to, but because they're owned by companies, in my opinion, that are not my opinion, factually owned by companies that predominantly lean one direction.
Can I ask this, and Bull, I know you want to say something, but let me ask this. If the vaccine had come out when Trump was still occupying the White House, because I'm sorry, that's the only way I can say it, when he was still in the White House, do you think that, because this is what I think, he was not happy that when the vaccines were released, it was released under Biden. Do you think that if the vaccines were released under him, more people who are anti-vax would have been vaccinated? And I find it ironic considering that he kind of snuck and got it when the first round first came out. So do you think that more people would have gotten vaccinated who claim they're anti-vax that they would have?
I think
he said so.
I think you would have had a reversal of roles, frankly. And because if you listen to some of the politicians that were trying to be president at the time or trying to be vice president or several others, they were all talking about how they would never take a vax if it was if it came out under under Trump's administration. I
think Kamala's exact words were that.
I'm probably not even paraphrasing that. Probably, and so this thing about trust, this thing about power and trust, I think are combined forces that create a lot of what we see today. And people want to either get into power or stay in power. So they'll say and do things to do that. Well, you can't really divest yourself from looking at the media the same way. Everybody wants their ratings to be highest. Everybody wants to have more income come in. No matter who owns these groups, they want more power, more seeming credibility, so that they can bring across the finish line whatever their personal or business agendas are. That's not different from a person in the House of Representatives or the Senate or the White House or any of those things. We're human beings. We're always looking, even as individuals, but even more so as these codified groups or tribes, looking to how to make sure ours is at the top of whatever kind of ranking you wish it them to be. And Trump may have said fake news first, and if he didn't have such a irritating personality, frankly, so he exacerbated the problem. He may have pointed it out to everybody's betterment, but then he exacerbated it by not being able to control his thumbs on the smartphone, right? And just going crazy with that kind of stuff. And I remember when he became president, I said, okay, if he's got good ideas, then I'll watch and I'll learn and I'll, agree with, just like I did with Obama. Obama had a lot of things that he put in place that I particularly wasn't fond of, but he was unbelievable at communicating. Unbelievable. If you would have been able to get even a tenth of the communication skills and give those to Trump, I do believe he would still be in office for sure, because there were a lot of good things that happened out of that time period as well.
Well, I just love how it's become like a sliding scale of failure. It went from really good speaking down to Trump, who is kind of sort of good, down to this guy who like can't say words.
Well, he can read the teleprompter well from yesterday or the day before, right?
Maybe.
Repeat again.
I think the funniest, and I guess my personal perspective on this is more of like I don't want to say it's a troll perspective, but I find myself laughing about almost everything because it is almost.
That's a personality defect.
Well, yeah, I've got chronic silliness syndrome. I can't get rid of it.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess my biggest thing is like I see these individuals who, at the end of the day, they don't care about any of us. That's my perspective. They don't care about any of us, and people look at them. Like the AOCs or the DeSantis's or all these individuals as they're the saviors of the future of the country. And the beautiful thing, in my opinion, as a constitutionalist, foremost, libertarian second, is that the Constitution and our structure of systems, for the most part, as long as it's not abused to absolute garbage levels, prevents these individuals from doing
checks and balances,
immense amounts of damage. Now, granted, I say that purely because if I don't say that, I'll become really depressed. So that's why I say that.
It's either that or anarchy, right?
Well, I mean, why not? We might as well. I mean, it's over there like, yeah. I mean, we might as well at this point because it's like everything has been so. It's almost like the mainstream media has decided to shirk their journalistic responsibilities. And what I mean by that is not that they want to report on things, but that they are more comfortable with writing think pieces and op-eds that they then put on the front page of their websites, like in a very bold area where people look, rather than actually reporting the news because the news is boring.
So guys, where do you think that started? Because I didn't start with Trump. There's no way it started with. I mean, he may have blown it up with all this fake news stuff and Twitter, the tweets and all that. But I think, and there's only two of us on this podcast to remember this, but I think it started around 60 Minutes era, maybe a little bit before that. But that became a news magazine. What do you think, Solid? Because that became a news magazine instead of just news.
It did, but I think the propaganda part of it came like around World War I, World War II.
From a governmental standpoint, for sure.
Where you're like saying, that Hitler's doing this, or the U.S. is doing this, or Russia's doing this, and even Winston Churchill. I mean, the things that he used to tell his people about getting out there and we're going to fight because of this, and this. When you think about it, it's been happening. So, I personally don't think that the mainstream media should go away, because we're going to be stuck with people throwing stuff out onto websites, saying that it's true, and it's going to be you put out something, I'll put out something, you'll put out something. So whether or not you trust them, I trust this other stuff less. So it's like, that's why I come back and I say, people are going to believe what they want to believe, because you just, I mean.
See, I'm more of, I hear what you're saying, and maybe the death of the mainstream media isn't exactly the terminology we should use. It's the transformation of it.
Yeah.
Really, that's occurring, because these people aren't stupid. They want to belong to the new mediums that are out there. And, media is just the plural for the word medium. That's all it is. So it's a medium of communication between people. And I don't know about you guys, but here we are sitting on a podcast with the four of us, and we're touting our positions to anybody that wants to listen out there. I think that is, number one, hugely important, but number two, something I couldn't have even imagined 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. And I think that ability for us to be transparent about our positions eventually will, consolidate. Well, so if you throw everybody's position out there, and people are able to swim through that and decide for themselves, they will start codifying around positions.
Yeah.
And that's how newspapers grew. That's how television stations grew. That's how cable stations grew. So I think the same thing is happening all over again, just with an immediate and very individualistic medium.
Well, I mean, Solid, you're right. I mean, the term muckraking it came around into popularity in 1912. So you're right around World War I. I personally think that the I can't say words today. The sensationalization of media has been around for a long time. Sensationalization has been around for a long time. Thank you so much. I was having a moment there. And I think we're now going back to almost where we started in 1912, because in 1920s with the Communications Act in 1934, muckraking kind of fell out of popularity. People are like, this is sensationalized. We don't like what this is. We're not going to listen to it. And just to give our listeners some perspective, the Communications Act of 1934 specifically was an agreement between commercial television and the people of the United States that established that the airways are public property. Commercial broadcasters are licensed to use the airways, and the main condition for use will be whether the broadcasters serve the public interest, convenience, and necessity. I think the last two, necessity, gone, convenience, maybe, public interest, not so much. I think that's been manipulated by social media and by the transformation of technology, frankly. But I think right now we're at another almost, post muckraking stage of muckraking, if that makes any sense, from a news position. And I personally don't know how we get out of it without getting rid of the mainstream media, because the mainstream media is tied to that narrative that they can't let go of. I mean, CNN is not going to wake up one day and admit that they were wrong about Hunter Biden. They're not going to say that ever.
But don't you think that if you get rid of that, you're creating just another monster, that you're going to have someone else who is going to, who is create their own news thing or whatever, and you're creating another monster. So,
well, I guess you're looking at it. Well, yeah, you're looking at it from like the lesser of two evils. And I understand that. Like, I get it. Like the lesser of the two evils would be to keep the mainstream media with its downward trend of the funnel. I understand that. I don't necessarily know if I agree entirely, primarily because the mainstream media will continue saying the same thing ad infinitum until they go to business. I mean, you look at organizations like the Daily Wire, or you look at Tim Pool, or you look at even Al Jazeera, or these other fringe organizations that would be considered super left wing or super right wing by mainstream media. They're getting more, or Joe Rogan, prime example, getting more views immensely. That whether they're pushing information that's correct or not is obviously another discussion. But with that being said, they're getting immensely more views, almost to the point. I mean, you look at what's his name? The guy from CNN, Brian Stelter. He's gone. Like his show's gone because people are not watching it. They don't trust these organizations, and I would say a lot of this is primarily because of 2020 and some of the decisions that these people held to without like really thinking about the ramifications of it. But at the same time, I think as time goes on, I don't think people want traditional forms of information anymore. I don't want to have to sit on my couch for an hour and watch Don Lemon, basically talk about his positions. I mean, if I wanted to get information, I'd either for me personally, as a millennial, I want to either read it and actually read it myself and determine for myself, or B, have someone tell me their side when they talk about it. And the mainstream media does not give you that. I mean, even with Fox News, they're not going to tell you we're going to take all the right positions. They're just going to say what they want to say. Same with CNN, same with, NBC, ABC. They never come out and say, this is the position we have. And we can segue into this eventually, but I did some research on this, which is kind of enlightening, but also really alarming, because my position has always been, as I said a little bit ago, follow the money. And I am not pro big business. I would prefer, we have small government and small business. And over the last few years, with everything that's been going on with the decision with COVID and everything that's been going on with the decisions of policies and lockdown, we've driven hundreds, if not thousands of businesses that are small out of business in favor for large companies like, AT&T and Walt Disney Company and the National Amusements, which owns Viacom and CBS and Fox Corporation, all these organizations that own like almost 95% of the market just by affiliation or mergers. So that's my position. I think it's we've dug ourselves into a hole, and by we I mean the mainstream media, and I don't think they're ever going to be able to get out of it. I think that's my position on it.
Can I ask a quick question on something you said there? Do CNN and Fox and all them, do they not admit their bias? That's maybe a stupid question, but I actually don't know. Like, do they believe they're telling you fact?
Well, I mean, let's take the Washington Post, for example, right? Their slogan is "Democracy dies in darkness," whatever that means. And let's see if I have information on them. WAPO, I should. Do I not? Well, we'll use them as an anecdotal position because I don't have them on this list. But
that they're owned by Bezos, correct?
I'm pretty sure they're owned by Bezos, which Jeff Bezos, I'm pretty sure, is left leaning. Could be wrong. I could be wrong. So my whole position is when you have slogans like that, "Democracy dies in darkness," or CNN's, I think they're the America's most trusted news organization. Mm-hmm. I think that's their slogan. Those slogans are not meant to be biased. They're meant to be like with what we were talking about with the specific organization in 2020. The BLM, you can't disagree with that. You can't disagree with a position that is made to be a non-falsifiable premise. Why would I ever disagree with Washington Post? Democracy dies in darkness. Why would they not push it? Why would they push anything that's against democracy? Like it's these positions that they have tie them to the narratives that they create. So you got CNN, they're tied to the narrative of being America's most trusted news network. Why would they ever deviate? Why are they ever going to say that they're wrong? Same with Washington Post or any other organization that has these statements that sound really good on paper, but tie you to a narrative that you cannot deviate from. Yeah. And it almost sets them up for failure long term because one wrong article, look, if CNN ever came out and said, "Hey guys, we were really wrong," like say 2026, they come out and say, "Hey, we were really wrong about the last presidency about some things." No one would ever listen to them ever again. Never. And when we talk about retractions and articles, people don't go back and read that stuff. They don't go and check.
Retractions are on the last page anyway.
Yeah, and they're at the very, very bottom, and no one ever reads it, and that's intentional because they don't want to ever lose the audience that they have. I don't want to say they've tricked, but the audience that they've developed through a very coerced form of, telling a story, if that makes sense.
So the question I have when listening to all this, and it always comes through my mind, there's, we talked about power and trust and all those kinds of things. And you can see that people I don't know if they care about your trust, but they want to make you feel like they trust them and they want that power. But there's something behind the curtain here on all of this. And there's an agenda. When big businesses, 6 of them, I think you said, yep. Wolf, that own most of these conglomerates, right? Most of these communication in general has been the number one power for civilizations, for states, for countries, for fiefdoms, for everything through the course of time. How do you communicate for those that are not in power? The people in power said, okay, how do we keep power? We need to either hold down the ability for the masses to communicate with each other. Back in the medieval times, you just didn't have any educated population. Now everybody's educated. So if everybody's educated and everybody has ubiquitous information at their fingertips at all time, how do you control that? You control that the way you just talked about, Wolf. You control it by spelling out your narrative. Your top line is, democracy dies in darkness. So everything under that headline means it must have the truth attached to it, which is why.
Well, then what you do as well is if someone pushes back, so you look at like my favorite, most comedic, hilarious commentator of all time, but the most banned person of all time, Alex Jones. I think he's hilarious. I don't agree with anything he says, but I think he's hilarious.
Come on, we got to hear the voice.
Oh, I can't do the voice. The voice is a little bit too much. But I guess my point is you look at the media, as you said, and they'll take those positions, but then they'll also, like they did in medieval times, except they do this in a technological way, they'll burn people at the stake who discover them. So, I mean, a prime example is Alex Jones. The guy can't get a job anywhere. I think he's in major legal trouble right now. Another example is Joe Rogan.
Isn't that today's cancellation in a way?
Yeah, you just tell someone is, you say 3 buzzwords. You say someone is either completely and totally, and I'll use this term because it's more sensitive than the other R term. They're ignorant to other races. You'll say that, or you'll say that they're somehow a communist on the right hand side, or you say that they're an extremist. Those 3 buzzwords, and all of them end in "ist." And if you say any one of those, people automatically go, "Oh my God! Well, of course. Why would you make those charges if they aren't correct?" And I don't know. I just think, like you said, 6 total corporations, 15 billionaires. I mean, as the smallest group of best buddies I've ever heard of in my entire life that owns like 95% of, I mean, it's astonishing how much they own.
Have you guys ever seen the videos collaged together of all like the CNNs, the Fox, the CNBC, all saying the exact same lines?
Yep.
You know, the headlines and all that. I think that is a huge red pill moment to a lot of people. It was to me. Even Obama's speech was the exact same as some mayor. I think it was a Washington mayor or something, word for word. Melania, I think, didn't she say the exact same speech as, was it Michelle Obama?
Michelle Obama.
Yeah.
Yep.
And those, I know it's little and it could like, because we're, you know, obviously into this stuff, that's nothing. But to people who maybe think that they're sitting down to watch CNN and learn facts, or Fox and learn facts, when they see that, they're like, wow, what's going on here? Like, that's a wake up moment for me. It was anyway. And you were asking earlier, like, what do we do? We're living in a world where you have polarized opposites. And I've heard this a lot on podcasts, and especially hear people in the UK when they talk. We actually say that we feel sorry for you guys in America because your media is atrocious. It really is. Like how they can, you know, polarize people to be at one end of the spectrum and the other. Whereas here in the UK, we're not so much. BBC is our main one. And to be honest, you're kind of hard pushed to find anything else. And they are center left. I would say they're lean definitely left, but it's not so big here. And I just say, like, the you touched on it there with Alex Jones and Joe Rogan's numbers. I don't know if they're telling the truth, because who can verify that? But I do believe it, that since maybe 2016, since Trump took over and people are seeing that the media are lying, blatantly lying, that they are choosing to go for alternative media, like rebel media or podcasting, you know, someone's views that you said again, that they're telling you, look, this is where I stand, but at least you know. And I think that, you know, that people are hungry for that, to hear different perspectives, and those media people that aren't, you know, in the big bucks, you know, and they've got nothing to lose. That's how I look at them. I'd rather go on Twitter and listen to a random person like me tell me their side of the story with, you know, what's going on in the last 2 years, than sit and listen to the BBC tell me, because they've lied and lied. And again, I know I'm on a rant here, but it's like, when people lie to you, how can you trust them again? Like, I've got one of those like mentalities. It's like, once you lie, like, why should I ever trust you again? And my attitude has been, obviously with the conspiracy theorist hat on, is I don't even watch TV anymore. I don't have the aerial plugged in. The most I'll do is sit and watch a Netflix. Like, I'll watch Stranger Things. I'll throw on some of The Office when I'm eating or whatever, but that is it for me. Like, the odd movie at the cinema with the wife on a date night, whatever. And people look at me like, wow, that's crazy. But honestly, my life has been so much better since I made that decision. And it's funny because I just bought this book last weekend, Stop Reading the News, a manifesto for a happier, calmer, and wiser life. And to be honest, we all I've heard this again on so many podcasts, like, you know, the Instagram models, the girls that just post pictures every day and they get 1,000 likes and all that. They don't watch media and their lives are amazing. And sometimes you think ignorance is bliss. So I really do commend people to stop watching your CNNs and Foxes and BBCs and start looking into things for yourself. Like, that's why I think you asked, I'll finish off my little rant here, that before World War II, in between World War I and World War II, I really see those people as men and women that would hold their governments accountable. They would sit in bars and pubs and talk about the government and have really constructive conversations. You do that now. If I walk into a pub with my friends and bring up COVID or Ukraine, it's like, whoa. We're out to enjoy ourselves here. Leave that. That's no. And then you go into a canteen at work, and throughout the last 2 years, I think I got maybe one toolbox talk from a work about regulations. What happens when you're sick? Do you self-isolate? Because nobody wants to talk about it. And it's, you know, people storm out the room and all that. And I hate that. So that's why, you know, this podcast, having these chats, I think is really key to hopefully people listen and see that, you know, people can chat and talk about things without storming out of rooms and all that.
Yeah.
But
well, can I interject really quick? Solid, I would probably say I agree with you. Like, when it comes to, like, I desperately would love for the mainstream media to be where it should be. I mean, I truly do, because I went to college. When I was in college, I was, studying political science. I was really interested in particularly Francis de Tocqueville's position on what democracy in America should be. I read the entire book. We obviously had to read it because of the classes I was in, Federalist Papers, all that jazz. My biggest thing is I wish the people of this country, specifically in this country, because it seems to be a symptom of almost lackadaisical apathy when it comes to politics or anything that is required to keep the country going. I wish they would have the ability and wherewithal, or maybe the patience, to talk about this stuff. But to Ian's point, it's why would we trust those people? I mean, why would I trust anybody after 2020? I mean, honestly, I'm right there with you. At the same time, the other side of that argument is, okay, well, now we have a large group of people who are now despondent, who don't want to talk about any of this, who only want to listen to people who are not mainstream media. And then it causes, to Solid's point, an echo chamber of almost, I don't want to say crazy ideas, but ideas that are hyper polarized, just like the mainstream media is pushing. You got two different sides, and then you got a side in the middle. And the one side's the right, and they think, every liberal is a lizard person. You got the left side, where everyone who's super polarized thinks everyone is somehow racist. And then in the middle, you got a group of people who think everyone is out to get them. Any information is bad information unless it appeals to their own bias. And I frankly don't know how you get past this point, because it's almost as if the universe, if we're going to talk about, what I like to refer to as space racism, if we're going to talk about, being an Aries or a Scorpio, it's almost as if the universe wants these things to fall apart. That's what it seems like, because they can't let go of the fact that they are not correct on a lot of their positions, not because those positions are on paper, not because those positions don't sound good, but because they're not functional in reality. They don't operate within realistic perspectives or viewpoints.
Guys, do you think part of this is information overload? Mm-hmm. There's just too much information coming at us all the time. I mean, Solid, when I was a kid, but you knew you had a encyclopedia salesperson come to your door. That's how you got. If you wanted a big volume of information about the world, that's how you got it, and it changed whenever those encyclopedias decided to make a change, and you got the local paper delivered and things like that. And so there was this intake of information, and it was satisfactory to fill a certain void in your life. Now, every void is filled by inundated information. And if you're not at least reading the headlines, which is part of the problem today, everybody wants those 8-second bites now. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm just as guilty. I'll flip through my phone and look at these headlines, and if something interests me, I'll dive into it. And the only time it interests me is if it's something that I'm nostalgic about, perhaps, or it's something that jumps off the page as maybe hitting an emotion for me, which is problematic, because that creates that echo chamber you're talking about.
Yeah. But see, and this is why I say, yes, the media needs to revamp, but it is needed, because, again, you may not turn on your TV, whatever, but if you're scrolling through your phone or on your computer and you're looking up, things, you're going to the media, so and to just ban the media totally, we're going to end up with people on some of these sites or whatever who are total whack jobs, I don't know, because I wanted to bring up FDR and his fireside chats, which turned into the State of the Union, whatever. But Franklin Roosevelt used to sit there next to the fireplace with the ambiance and everything, and he would tell the American people, and people just sucked it up. Mm-hmm. So again, what's the difference between that and now? What you have now? If FDR had access to YouTube or Twitter, it would be a whole different story. Mm-hmm. So that's why I said, do I think the media is right? No. Do I think they are needed? Yes, because then you're going to end up with people who have their different podcasts And all people are going to do is just say, well, yeah, I was listening to Solid and she said that and she is absolutely right. And I could be totally wrong.
So,
So either way, you're still going to get people who are going to follow and listen to people that is just absolutely
you got to trust somebody, right?
So yeah,
right,
so
but who are you going to trust? And then going
not FDR. He lied to everybody.
Right,
Nobody had told you.
This is what I'm saying. So when you
wasn't he a werewolf person?
There's a movie specifically about that.
There is a movie, by the way. You guys should watch about him. It's hilarious. He's like
terrible
he has polio and he fights werewolves. It's on Netflix. Just I'll send it to you guys. It's incredible.
I mean, it's just crazy. And I just want to bring up something about 2020. 2020 is never going to go away. It never is. Because when you have someone, yes, I'm going to bring him up again. When you have someone like Trump who just will not let it go. And this is what I never understood when he started saying, I'm going to bring this up, y'all, because yes, I am. The election was stolen.
Yeah.
He was saying that before the first ballot even was cast. He was saying it back in February, March. If I don't win, the election was stolen. And he even said, if you repeat something over and over, people will believe it.
Isn't that the same
thing?
Can
I pause it something? Didn't Hillary say that?
Said the same thing.
But this is hook, line, and sinker. So again, how can you, but again, like I'm just saying, how can you say something is going to happen when people didn't do anything for it to happen? And now, I mean, it's just like,
Nostradamus.
We are going to be talking about 2020 and 40, 45th, 15.
It'll be a case study. It'll be a case study in politics.
Yes.
I mean, 100%.
Yes.
I guess, look, so here's my biggest thing is I really struggle with the election stolen argument. Not because I care about where it came from. I personally think people were saying it in 2016 when Trump won. I think people were saying it in 2004 when George W. Bush won. I think people probably said it when Reagan won. I would argue that people probably have said it every single 4 years from the beginning of time. Obviously not with the original Chad, as I like to refer to him, George Washington. Obviously not with that guy, but ad infinitum with every president. Someone has always had that position. I guess my point is, as time has gone on with the advancement of technology and the polarization, because that's what the media does. They polarize. They don't give you information. They polarize both sides because what is the best way to divide your enemy or to conquer your enemy? You divide them. So, when it comes to Donald Trump, of course he said that. He said that in 2020 and Hillary said that in 2016. Everyone has said that because they don't want to lose. I get it. And I agree that it's a nonsensical position to take because if that's the case, if people start saying that stuff, then every election's faulty. Every single one.
Exactly. But people believe it. People will believe it.
But here's the thing.
Fold this back into what we're talking about, though, as far as communication, the news and the legacy news, if you will. I wish I could remember the name of the USA Today journalist that talked about the platform or media cabal that took it upon themselves a couple years before 2020 to make sure they were going to do everything they possibly could to make sure Trump did not get reelected. I mean, that was, that's out there. You can look it up and read it and everything. So and this is not to verify what he believes one way or another, because there's all kinds of conspiracies around the machines and duplicate voting and all that other stuff. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about Facebook edging in one direction, Twitter taking him off. All those kinds of things have an effect. And that's what I was going to say about the media in general, because there's something called the Al Jazeera effect and the CNN effect that talks about how there's behind the curtain, and I always say it that way because, that's where the wizard always sits, behind the curtain, right? And there's somebody with levers trying to move things in a direction that they believe is the right direction to go. And they do that through manipulation or spinning of the information that's disseminated in all manner, shape, and size. But so if you're able to change an election vote by a year's worth of pushing an agenda in one direction, spinning everything 80% in one direction, you can go back later and claim we moved 5% of the vote that way. I'm just making numbers up at this point. But if you're able to do that, that's the difference in this country between every presidential election.
It is.
Yeah. Well,
So-
can I posit something I've been thinking about? Because while doing this study, I've especially in politics, I always think back to the argument of the great switch between Republicans and Democrats. I always think back to that. And I think we could be going through that again. Because what I see from
why don't you define that, Wolf?
So there was a period of time, at least from my understanding, and I did not include this in my notes, so I'm paraphrasing, where the Republican Party switched to the Democratic Party during the time of the slaves, and they decided to side with anti-slavery arguments as opposed to pro-slavery arguments, and that is consistently referred to in every discussion I've had about that with people who are either on the left or the right. Right. My position now is I think parties are switching again. If you look at the Democratic Party, almost every single major conglomerate is a Democratic-leaning organization. It comes from Amazon. You look at Disney, who owns a huge amount of the market. You look at AT&T owns a huge amount of the market. I mean, you look at all these organizations, and they lean a specific way. Why? Because it's advantageous for them to lean a specific way. I mean, we can talk about taxation, obviously. Changing certain things specifically with this administration has led to higher taxes on our end, through third-party revenues or avenues with like gas and stuff. But with that being said, I think we could be going through that again, because you look at, the Democratic Party has always been anti-big business, but pro-big government, right? Well, I think they're moving towards pro-big business and pro-big government. That's my position. And I think that it is pretty observable from an anecdotal perspective, primarily because people, with all the pushback against Disney, with some of the positions they've taken when it comes to certain agendas, with all the pushback, oddly enough, with Amazon, when people say, oh, we don't like big business, but then everyone buys from Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like big business, you're not going to buy from Amazon. So, I think we could be going through that again. And I think that's what's probably impacting a lot of this, is this weird switch party-wise of positions that say, well, wait a second, we're towards the latter half of our campaigns, we're towards the latter half of our ownership of businesses. We need to stay in power longer. So let's
it comes down to the power again. And it's a form of regulatory capture, as the saying goes, where regulators create these industry-wide criteria that businesses need to adhere to.
Yeah.
And then the business lobbying entities push all the money in a direction to help the lawmakers create those regulations in the first place. So it goes back to something one of you guys said half an hour ago about small business versus large business. And these regulations, they not universally, but almost always lean in the direction of the larger businesses. So what large business isn't going to want that?
Yeah,
Forget all the social agenda items that individuals within companies may or may not want. Put a big blinder on that. Make those companies totally anonymous, and you'll see follow the money again. You'll see where the money comes from and goes to, and where the regulators apply those things, and who wins and who loses. I mean, I've owned small businesses for the last 20 years, and they've been crushed, and it's not because of pandemics. It's because all my small businesses were in Southern California. And the regulations that dominate that region, some of them are for very good reasons. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to argue all those reasons. I'm not saying that. But when I don't have the same kind of money to put into something, or I don't have the same money as a small business owner to raise all my employees' wages by 20%, and Amazon can, what's going to happen to me versus them?
Yeah. Can I share some stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, give me a second. I think this should work. Okay, so can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Let me.
Not yet.
There we go.
Okay, so this is a website that I think everyone should use with literally any major corporation. It's called opensecrets.com. Just to give some perspective for our listeners, this is where I got a lot of my information when it comes to donation side of things. Just to go to Bull's point, you have a demographic of companies that are donating actively to a demographic of politicians that are then engaging in a certain narrative that's ingested by the viewers and the listeners, then is regurgitated in real time and then studied through research groups and think tanks, and then the cycle continues. So this particular organization, just to give some information, just to the listeners, is a nonpartisan, independent, and nonprofit organization. Open Secrets is the nation's premier group tracking in money and U.S. politics and its effect on elections and public policy. So this is something that I was paying attention to normally with my studies. A prime example, one of the first companies that we looked at was AT&T. And to go back to the notes that I put together so people have an understanding of where I'm coming from. Media consolidation has been a major issue. Obviously, 15 billionaires, 6 total corporations. We've talked about this: AT&T, Walt Disney Company, National Amusements, News Corp, Fox Corporation, which was owned in part by the Murdochs, Sony, and Hearst Communications. The only one that is not currently doing stuff online news-wise is Sony, but that's probably subject to change soon. Now, AT&T, for a prime example, you can see the total contributions, you can see the total aspects of lobbying in 2022, and when it comes to the recipients, you can see where all their money is going currently. You've got the Democratic Party with almost $1,000, 39% of spend. Obviously, they've got a nominal, not important part of, the statistics to others, whatever that means. Incumbents, which is what I want to pay attention to, 91% to incumbents. You've got House recipients, Democrats, 753,000 compared to 465, almost 50% more. Senate recipients, 120,000 to 104, so there's a smaller deviation there. You got party recipients, federal compared to Republicans. You can see the disparity between the two. And then you can see, obviously, very helpful from PACs and from individuals. I believe political action committees is the term for PACs. I could be wrong. So the data that I put together, there's a lot of it. But when it comes to specific metrics, obviously AT&T owns CNN, as I said, 947,000 to Democratic candidates. You can see all the data that I just did there. Per House recipients, average 3.8K. For Republicans, 3.6K. And then for other organizations like Comcast, the owner of NBC, 1.16 million to Democrat candidates, 66% of cycle spend. Keep in mind the percentages here because they're important. 577,000 to Republicans, or 33%. You can see predominantly incumbents, predominantly Democrats when it comes to spend, right here as well. And then same thing with National Amusements, owner of CBS, 85% of their spend to Democrats this year, 14% to Republicans, 86% of spend to incumbents, as opposed to 13% to non-incumbents. And my biggest argument there is the more incumbents that are within, power, the worse things get because they're less likely to do anything. Same thing, it's kind of a similar trend, is a large disparity between percentages between the two parties. And I think there's a reason for that. Sony Corp, even though they're not doing news, you can see the disparity. It's incredible. I mean, 82 to 17%. Obviously, the numbers don't add up there, but it's still, disparity is huge. Same thing with the congressional candidate. These are the averages for congressional candidates. 74% to 24% Republicans, 86% to incumbents, 13% to non-incumbents, 76% to Democrats for federal, 23% for Republicans. And I think this ties into the fake news description earlier. You cannot tell me, and I know this is anecdotal, but you cannot tell me with a straight face that these organizations that are predominantly operating parts of one party, doesn't matter which side, one party in this instance, are unbiased. You can't tell me that. I don't believe it. I won't believe you because the numbers tell you otherwise. I mean, sure, they'll donate to the Republican Senate and they'll donate to the congressional candidate of the Democrats and they'll show disparities between the two. But 74% to 24%? I mean, those are numbers that almost guarantee till the end of time that you will perform perfectly campaign-wise. And I think that when it comes to censorship and when it comes to narratives, that only points to the fact that they are blinded by the bias that they choose to hold in opposition to others' perspectives. Not in the sense that those others, have good ideas, but in the sense that it's my way or the highway. I mean, it's the numbers are almost, I don't think I've ever seen, at least from my personal perspective, I've ever seen data points that are so one-sided across the board.
You need to ask yourself, is that a reflection of the population and the agendas of the Democratic Party versus Republican? Or is that, as I said a few moments ago, more of a reflection on what those businesses in particular are looking to achieve?
So I think that depends on where the money's coming from, right? So you look at CNN, AT&T owns them. 1.3 million is from PACs, 344,000 is from individuals. And this flips, right? So this flips. Walt Disney, predominantly individuals, 610,000 to 78K from PACs. Then you've got Comcast, which is the owner of NBC Universal. I mean, you can see that they're 1 million from PACs. The other half is from 978 to individuals, so a little bit more even there. And then you got National Amusements, the owner of CBS, 290K from individuals, 99,000 from PACs, and with Sony, 187 from individuals and 51,000 from PACs. I think it's all dependent. I think, but at the end of the day, I don't necessarily think that is indicative of anything other than general leaning from people who have money. I mean, at the end of this is a power argument. Ian is probably going to agree with me in this. The biggest part of society, it's always those who have not against those who have. Mm-hmm. The problem I see is that people don't tend to moderate their viewpoints on that. When they go in that direction, they start to go in the, they're no government, we should start going in the socialist communist direction. They don't moderate their position in the sense of saying that can exist in a free market economy still, and it can still be a bad thing. I personally think that I don't know how you get out of this, because this specifically AT&T might as well be operating as a Democratic Party.
Well, Sorry, you touched on it a bit there. I was wondering if you could expand on it. Maybe the only thing I've heard is that under Bill Clinton's era, he deregulated the media, and it became from, now I'm paraphrasing again, I think it was something like 80 or 90 companies owned all the media in the world, and he made it deregulated, and now it's like what you say, it's 6 companies, but it's 15 billionaire families. So there's where you start, in my opinion. You go back to regulating the media, and also, in my opinion, I think we should hold them accountable. I think everyone should be on board with that. That if a media company lie, I mean, what I learned was on the Joe Rogan podcast with Tim Pool. He mentioned that all they need to do now is put a retraction at the end of the last page, or publish something late at night when everyone's in their bed sleeping, and maybe they get a £50,000 fine. That's pennies to these companies. So
the retraction should be in the first page, right up top.
Well, but then again, here's the quandary that because I agree with you guys, but the quandary that then gives the media companies is, okay, well, they're no longer a source of information that can be trusted. So it's damned if they do and damned if they don't.
What it does, Wolf, is it makes those companies figure out the parameters that they need to run their articles on. If you were required by law to put all your retractions on the front page before anything else, the whole goal would be to be able to have as few of those as possible on the front page, right? Yeah. So over time, to Solid's point, you would start to see the legacy media start to change, I think, back to a place that could be more trusted. I mean, they've got to either recoup themselves or go away, one or the other. How do they recoup themselves is the question.
Well, see, but this is where I disagree. I don't think that there's a way that they can get out of it without damaging their perspective that's already been damaged beyond belief.
Damaged or dead, though, which is better.
Well, but here's the thing: is I think that results in both. Because if I'm CNN, right, and my ratings are going into the toilet, people are not watching, what I put out there. The evidence is very clear. They're not watching that information, and then all of a sudden I have to come out and start saying, well, you know what, guys, we lied, or hey, guys, we didn't do a good enough job. So they're damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't.
Don't you think that if you came out and said that you lied, number one, it'll be big news because you came out and said it, so people will start watching.
Yeah.
But don't you think that if you came out and said that I lied, or we lied, that this isn't true, that people would maybe start listening to you now that you've been caught, or now that you've been found out?
And they're not going to say they lied. They'll twist that, but they'll say it without saying it, right?
No, right. Well, I understand that, but again, my problem is if you take away the media, I don't want to be left with just anybody, and we have a lot of anybody's out there who can just start saying stuff and posting stuff, and it's like, how do I know that you're not lying?
Well, see the way I could answer that is, I know Tim Pool's the example I'm thinking of, but let's take him out of the equation because he's a big name now, and I think when you get big, you get numbers like that, you're open to maybe some lies and some corruption. So let's just say I decided, what the hell, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to buy a camper van, I'm going to buy a big camera, and I'm going to go around the world showing you real news, like go into like Ukraine, pulling out my camera and saying, look guys, look what's going on. To me, I trust those people. That's independent media. That's people who have nothing to lose. They're and this is the same problem with pretty much everything in our world today. Is when you get to the highest of any company or any, you're open to corruption and lies, and you're going to save your skin. You're going to do all you can, and that's what we're seeing with the media. They've consistently lied throughout time, and all they can do is just post a retraction at the end of an article or something and say, sorry, we lied. And 50% of America will still watch CNN, and they'll still watch Fox. They'll still do it because people, this is a phrase you like to use, Solid, is individual responsibility. I urge everyone, obviously with the conspiracy side of me, I always say, do your own research. Make sure if I say anything on a podcast, don't just trust me, go and fact check me. And not a lot of people are willing to do that part. They're just wanting to come home, make their supper, sit down in front of Fox and CNN and take it in. And that is a dangerous, dangerous thing, especially, again, alluding to the last 2 years. What has been said in the media in the last 2 years has cost lives on both sides. So that is a dangerous precedent to set, that you're allowing and this is more an appeal to people, not the media. We know we're never going to be able to change the media. And I think, we're talking about how can we fix it? It's not going to happen. I'm a pessimist, I think. So we need to then take individual responsibility, start looking into alternative sources. If you're at the very minimum, you should be flicking over to CNN, then over to Fox. There's not a lot of people willing to do that, I tell you that. And then, then start, maybe watch a Joe Rogan episode when he's talking about, he's maybe talking to a doctor or a nurse, and then go on to, what Alex Jones is saying. Like, I know I'm going broad, but listen to me, listen to you. We've got no skin in the game. There's no money. There's hardly anybody watching us, but we're going to do our best to bring you truth and fact. Whereas the media, I just do not trust, because there's that.
No, and I get what you're saying, but even if people, I hope we go mainstream, and that is what I said. But who's to say that someone doesn't dangle, hey, you guys, we'll give you, $1 million if you come on our show and blah, blah, blah. It's like when you get to a certain point, everybody at some point is going to start looking at, well, I'm going to start saying this now that I've gotten to this level. I'm just saying, how do I know I can trust the people who are not mainstream? Because people send me videos.
Yeah.
I watch them. I have heard stuff from both sides. I've heard so much stuff, and in the end, it just makes my head hurt, because it's like there's so much stuff, and I'm listening to it, but some of it just sounds so far-fetched. And then when you try to research it, it's like, okay, well, this person's saying this, but this person's saying that. And that's where that's why I just come back and say, in the end, people are going to believe what they want.
Yeah.
Well, I think let me jump in for just a second, because Wolf and I have had a discussion over the course of the last 2+ years now, and we've known each other a long time. And
only 2.5+ years.
Well, yeah, we've known each other a little longer than that, but in any event, I've been, throughout my life, I've been kind of the optimist. I like to say the joke about the cup being, it's either half full or half empty, but either way, it's still half, right? That's kind of the way I've looked at things, overall. But I've told the Wolf that I always kind of started, anybody I met, I would say, hey, you've got an A in my book. And then from there, as a relationship develops, and if things start to go sour or south, or I don't agree or whatever, I lower that grade, right? And the Wolf is always like, no, start them with an F, man. Start everybody with an F, and let them prove themselves. And I was like, I used to argue with him all the time about this.
You still do. And it's a problem.
Well, it's still, obviously I need some psychological help with this, but
this is all you. It's not me.
But the fact is over the course of the last couple of years, because of the things we're all talking about here, where I've lost trust in both individuals, organizations, people or entities that we've kind of put up on pedestals in our life to look at. Media is one of those.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it used to be you had the anchor that came on at 6:00 at night, and everybody would watch them, and everybody would believe everything they said. And then they decided to put their opinion on there.
Yeah.
Which changes everything. That's why I was talking about 60 Minutes earlier, because it's a news magazine, and a magazine is a story. And a story needs to be something people can grab a hold of and listen to and understand and start to agree with or disagree with, which is great for all of us to determine with individual responsibility where our directions lie. But it for me, the problem is I just don't trust anything. I'm seeing everything, as I said earlier, everything has a curtain. And my whole job through looking through information, like you were saying, go to Joe Rogan, go to CNN, go to Fox, go to all these different things. It enables you to kind of part that curtain a little bit and try to decide for yourself what's real and what's not.
Yeah. Well, I
Well,
think,
see-
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, well, I am one of those people. I have someone who pushes back on me all the time because I am not a Tucker Carlson fan, but I know it's not you.
Yeah, Bob's the
but,
biggest Tucker Carlson.
But I do go and listen to everybody. I do, because I want to know what everybody's saying, so but you're right. The majority of people out there, they are not going to go check it out, what have you, but at the same time, who has time to skip from channel to channel to channel or from podcast to podcast? And I mean, because I don't,
And that's what those media organizations are counting on, Solid.
yeah,
that you're just going to read the top line and go on.
Right.
And I think that's where I come in when it comes to being able to state your bias, right? So you got I listen to Tim Pool, I listen to Joe Rogan, I listen to Daily Wire, I've watched Rachel Maddow, which is it's hard. And not because I don't like her, it's just because she just sometimes says things that make me want to pull my hair out. And I'm sure the same goes for a lot of other individuals. Like people have their biases, and most of the time people will listen to things that they fulfill the biases that they have. I think how you get past that, and what I think would be the best way for these organizations, even though I think they're screwed, I think the best way for them to solve things is not necessarily to come out and say we've lied about everything, but to say, hey, we're a CNN, we're going to lean center left, or we're going to lean far left. That way people can see that when it very top of the article, this position is a far left position. Go ahead and read it your own risk. Or, ABC, this position is a center left position, read at your own risk. Or, Breitbart, this position is a far right position, read at your own risk. If they do that, then I'll start to believe them. I'll start to say, okay.
You just color code it all.
You just color code it. And the reason I say that is because most people wouldn't be able to tell you what the difference is anyway. I've had conversations with people who profess to be liberal that are saying conservative things, and vice versa when it comes to the conservatives on the other end. It's yeah, right. Well, and here's the thing. I want to distinguish between far left classical liberal, which as talking to you, Solid, I think that you probably align more with the classical liberal perspective. Me, I am an outbreak of classical liberalism. That's where libertarianism comes from. And so I understand the positions. I think the problem is that these organizations don't hold themselves accountable because they don't have to. They don't have to hold themselves accountable.
But when you talk about, because I do, I hate the fact now I'm labeled as a centrist, because I do have some conservative views.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I got to bring this up because I need to prove a point, sure. And it's a different topic. When you look at the abortion thing,
oh God,
and I told you I had to bring it up. I don't believe in it, but at the same time, I see a bunch of men making laws, for women, and when I see that, even though I don't believe in it, but at the same time, I totally understand what these people over here are upset about. They have a point. And while everybody is saying, yeah, the conservatives are this and this and this, it's going to snowball and it's going to bite them in the face. Mm-hmm. And we're, it's like you're listening to all these different people saying, well, abortion's this, and on Fox they're saying this, and on MSNBC or Rachel is saying this or whatever. again, it's going to come back with whatever people want
Yeah.
to be
So-
believe. So I do have conservative views.
Yeah.
But I am a liberal.
Mhm.
As of right now, I will never, ever, ever vote for someone that is on the right because of how I see that party. But at the same time, I look at the left, and again, it is, for me, it's the lesser of two evils. We actually need like at least four parties or more, because this is just getting to the point where if you want to just cast your vote, you're like going, okay, do I do here or do I do it here? And I know somebody who actually did eeny, meeny, miny, mo in order to vote.
Well, see,
so
but doesn't that dilute the two-party system down to a conglomerate of one-party rule? I mean, if you think about it,
yes.
yeah.
And this
So,
is why
so,
I'm saying we need
so what would
more
happen?
people come out.
Yeah, but what would happen is you've got a predominant of people right now who align
Mhm.
with being Democrat statistically. If we were to break up all the parties in a myriad of parties, it would just be one party rule, because the predominant amount of people would refer to being Democrat.
But,
I mean, the real.
But are they going to have that choice? But is that person going to come out and someone says, "Oh, okay, so she's on the green side or the independent side, whatever"?
Look at the UK. UK's got what, like how many parties you guys have, Ian? You guys have a
like
ton of
20.
parties.
We do have 4 or 5, but
And-
it's just the same
still
as
two.
America.
Yeah. So my whole point is all that does is dilute it. It's like when the Libertarian Party comes out, right? So just so I didn't vote for Trump in 2016. I voted for Jurgensen, or whatever the hell his name is, a libertarian guy who's never going to get anything done, because no one ever makes a good argument on the libertarian side. They always make these arguments that are so floozy. It's like, dude, like, find someone that can talk well, please. Like find someone who's moderate so we can actually talk about this. But I voted for him, and all that does is just it thins the pack. And in 2020, I saw the writing on the wall with true international pressure, the guy who's currently in office, and I didn't vote for him. Why? Because the guy's not alive. He's not alive. You can't make an argument that he is to me, because my family comes from the medical industry, and I say industry, you say field, now I say industry. And I understand what decline looks like. Now, I'm not going to say anything outside of that because I want us to be, kosher for the most part. But I saw the writing on the wall, and I unfortunately plugged my nose, and I did what I needed to do. Now, my whole point being is, if you break up the country into a myriad of different parties, all that does is dilute the parties down. People are not going to go and investigate the Green Party. They're not going to go and investigate other parties because it's too much work. And so when it comes to media, you do the same thing. Dumb it down.
Well,
Make it
I was
simple.
talking about this the other day. Ross Perot basically decided that particular election, in whatever year that was, with Clinton and HW.
That was 92.
92. I mean, his intervention, I don't know, 6% or 9% or whatever.
The chart that he had.
Oh, yeah.
So
exactly. I remember it well.
I have a question, by the way, for Solid, because you said you would never vote for the right. Do you think that's primarily based off what you're reading, the perception, or do you think it's what the right is currently saying?
It is partly because of what the right is currently saying. I see a lot of violence.
Okay.
I see a lot of white nationalism that has come out of the last 4 years. I see just things that I don't like. But on the other side, when I look at the Democratic Party, it's like, good Lord, guys, what are you all doing? And I have said this before on other podcasts, and if the Secret Service ever decide to listen, I have sent 2 letters to both Kamala and Joe. And I am, like I said, I'm surprised the Secret Service is not at my door, because I am someone, unlike other people, I am someone who I will write letters, I will call people, I will knock on doors, whether or not they read it, listen, let me in. But I do try to do something. But with the last time I voted, the last time I considered voting Republican was for McCain. Not that Obama wasn't good, because he wasn't in yet, but I didn't think he was ready. I didn't think he was ready. But what canceled the deal with me was when he brought on Sarah Palin. And I said, there's just no way, because McCain was already having heart issues and stuff. I'm like, good Lord, if this man dies in office, then this is what we're looking at. But now I'm like,
Sarah
Lord,
Palin's just
if Biden dies in office,
she's the conservative version of Kamala. Yeah, she's the conservative version of Kamala.
Right. So either way, and I am a person who will vote I vote for everything. I have never missed voting for anything. So again, I come back to the lesser of two evils. I don't want to hear that this person did this, and this, and his stats are this, whatever. Because at the end of the day, for me, I don't trust you. I don't trust what you would do to someone like me. Yeah. And that's more important than you may have put a little bit of money in some people's pocket, but at the end of the day, you don't like someone who looks like me.
So
I fear that
yeah.
more than anything.
So I have another question. If that's the case, do you think that is bred out of personal experience, or do you think that is from what's been reported currently and how it's been reported and how it's been couched?
I think it is both. I think it is both. Especially when I see what the alternative to what our current person is doing. This is a man who has said some things that is like, nope, because.
Well, I would profess to say that both candidates, both Biden and Trump, have said some pretty weird things. I mean, Trump, obviously, with what he said, was it Charlottesville, and how he said it. Obviously, there's a whole aspect on the other end of that spectrum. He had a full sentence that the media decided to cut off. With that being said, I don't think that it protects him. I think how he couched it was really, really dumb. Really, really stupid. And obviously, then you got Biden on the other end saying that he has children touching his hairy legs. So I think that the biggest thing for me, I guess the question that I have is, because we have these two sides, right? We've got this right that's hyperpolarized, and we got this left that's hyperpolarized. I see myself in the middle where I see there's problems, right? Where I would say that right now, because of how media has decided to push some things, we're probably more racist today than we were in the 60s. Legally, maybe, sorta. You really got to go deep in that one, because I think people tend to ignore some very obvious things. But with that being said, I think a lot of this is pushed because of the media itself. And then the politicians come in and say, well, Donald Trump comes in and says, you know what, we've got one demographic, a large part in the country, who is not feeling that they're being accurately represented by the Obama administration. So I'm going to come out and say what I need to get said to get elected. Common sense. Anyone would do that. And then you got the other end of the spectrum, the Biden administration right now, who is going to kowtow to literally any far left organization that hasn't not necessarily thought through good ideas, but hasn't thought those good ideas through to the very logical extent to where they go. Right. So my biggest thing is, if that's the case, if both those things are true, then we're at an impasse, right? Because say someone comes along who is a fantastic conservative candidate, purely because of the perspective of your position, my position, someone else's position. Say someone comes along like Tulsi Gabbard on the left who's fantastic, and the right doesn't want to vote for her because she's specifically left. You're at an impasse then, because there's nothing you can do. And so my biggest thing has always been not to vote for the lesser evil, but to vote for the better person, right?
And I understand that, but but that would require me sometimes not to vote. And I'm never
Why is that?
I'm never going to not, because I don't think that there is a person that is out there. I don't, because Biden he may have the title, but the people around him are telling him what to do.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
That's true with all administrations, though.
Right. And Trump may have had the title, but people were trying to tell him what to do, whatever. But I would love to vote for the person who is the better party. But at the same time, it's like, okay, if you get in there, are you going to have your Mitch McConnells or your Ted Cruz's that are whispering in your ear to do the exact same thing that the other person was?
I think you're going to have that from either side all the time.
Right. And that's why, and people may not like when I say the lesser of two evils, but that's what it comes down for me, because I'm always going to vote. There's no way in hell you're ever going to tell me not to cast my vote.
I think this comes back to the same thing we're talking about with the news media. We're putting a character, a person, which is not worthy in any stretch of the imagination, whether it's the anchor of the nightly news or whether it's the president of the United States. These people are not worthy of our blind trust. They're just not.
But the
So
other people that you put in place are that come up
but that's
after it.
I think your point is correct. You have to have a structure around you, and people are going to whisper in the air, and they're going to give things to their advantage versus not their advantage. All those kinds of things are true, but you have to believe in the written set agenda of a party. So if you have the Democratic Party listing, here's the 20 most important things to us, and you have the Republican Party saying, here's the 20 most important things to us, then you look at those and you say, okay, what can I live with? The lesser of two evils. Which can I live with?
Mm-hmm.
And then you vote for that party, knowing that person who gets that office is not really the one in control, but the actual agenda should be driving that. And when things happen after those people get in office and they don't adhere to their agendas, when I get upset. When they get into office and say we're going to do all these 10 things and they don't do any of them, instead they just change and flip-flop their position and go in a different direction, that's when things go the wrong way.
But that's what they all do. They all do it. They say I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this, and you're like, okay, I'm still waiting here. So.
I agree with both of you. I think the point I was really getting at, though, is so, and this is just personal anecdote, so take it with a grain of salt, however you want to. Whenever I look at a candidate, I obviously have preferences, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just bias, it exists. But I also understand that the world's not going to end if one gets in office and one doesn't. I look at the track record. So when we were in California, prime example, what was it? It was Gavin Newsom and who was the Republican candidate who was black? Larry Elder. Elder. So then there was what's his name from San Diego? I was a fan of him. Kevin something.
Mayor. I forget his name.
Yeah. What's his name? I can't remember his name. Anyway, I kept hearing that argument of the alternative is worse, and so for me, like, look, my indicators for performance for politicians is how much am I paying when it comes to taxes? How much am I paying when it comes to inflation? How is foreign policy looking if it's federal? And what is it that is important socially within the state that I'm living in that is currently the topic that isn't being handled very well? California, prime example, homelessness and drug abuse. Two top things have not been dealt with for the last 20 years. And it's the same type of approach that Baltimore and Chicago and a lot of other states have. Just throw a bunch of money at it and it'll eventually go away, or just ignore it. And a prime example is like LA. Dude, it's illegal to call the police to remove someone who's ODing on your front porch. That's insanity. And so for me, when I looked at Gavin Newsom, I looked at Larry Elder. I looked at Larry Elder and I said, okay, he's got different policies than Newsom. I don't like everything that he says, but I think maybe that might be a good change. I voted in his direction. But everyone I talked to who voted for Newsom just doubled down. So my whole point being is, at what point for both parties, not just for the left, not for the right, at what point can we all come together and say, look, every single person on either end is the enemy? They're not good. It doesn't matter who it is. They don't represent you like you want them to, and they never will. So at what point do you start differentiating between party voting and politician, person voting? Because I see a lot of it's like with what was it? Thomas Jefferson, who said factions would be the doom of the country, basically, to paraphrase. So that's where we're at. You can't vote party faction all the time, because if you do, you're just going to double down on bad policy ad infinitum. I mean, it's like with Republicans. If Donald Trump got in, right? Say he got in, and a bunch of Republicans, there was a red wave in 2020, and the parties, like they were in 2016, the Republicans controlled everything. And if gas was $8 a gallon, if taxes were egregious, if home prices were egregious, if food was more expensive, you know what I'd be doing? I'd be voting Democrat. That's what I would be doing. And most people do that. So my point with a lot of individuals when I talk to them and when I look at myself is, I don't really care so much about what party they're in. I do care about their policies, but I also understand a lot of the policies are nonsense. I mean, look, the Green Initiative can only be taken as far as it can be taken. You were not going to get to the point of utopia. It is factually true, because if it wasn't the case, we'd already be there. That's my position on it. I could be wrong. I know it's probably a straw man fallacy to some degree, but I still think that at the end of the day, people need to stop voting by party and then you start voting by politician record. Look at Joe Biden. Guy's been in office since 1912. I mean, he was around when the wheel was created. I mean, he doesn't know where he is, and that was obvious. Unbelievably obvious during the campaign trail. I mean, and my biggest thing is when they push forward the primary candidates, I was like, why didn't you guys pick someone like Tulsi Gabbard? Why didn't you pick someone that appealed to both ends? And I go back to what I said about the businesses. They didn't do that because the businesses run the thing. All these organizations run this. It has nothing at all to do with the politicians. It has nothing at all to do with their policyholders. It has everything to do with the fact these companies do it.
Politicians, why would you vote based on a politician? Right? Why would you vote based on that individual? I go back to what I said. I mean, you vote with your pocketbook, right? Yeah. Most of us do. We have this circle of influence that's really tight. We've got us and our immediate family. That's important thing number one. Okay. So the first level of your decision making comes from there. Then you move that circle out further and you start talking about a larger tribe and what's important to that tribe. Then you move it out even further to what's important to the world in general. Nowadays, though, they're pushing these agendas that are, that subscribe to this idea of burn everything down and start over, or
With
change things dramatically. Yeah. Exactly. There's the idea of utopia, as you said a moment ago. And I know we're going off on a lot of different tangents, but I think putting your level of trust in any individual is the wrong thing to do.
No, I tend to agree with the Wolf on that a little bit, because when again, and I don't know if you guys know, but me and Solid have had an argument over this a few times. We actually did a whole episode on why I don't vote, and I've never voted and I never will. But before I made that decision, I listened to Tulsi Gabbard on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I was like, wow, I could vote for this woman. And I'm conservative. Like, I would never, ever consider voting for a Democrat. But then she came along and I'm like, whoa, hold on a minute. Mm-hmm. And then I looked her up. I'm like, wow, she's in the Democratic Party. That's weird. Yep. And then this is to kind of tie it back to what we're actually talking about is, didn't she get demonized by Hillary Clinton because she said, oh, she was a Russian agent or something? And that is exactly what the whole show has kind of been about, how powerful the media are, that all they need to do is look into someone's tweet history from 10 years ago and see that they tweeted something like this, and it destroys.
Well, it wasn't exactly 10 years ago. It was like while she was on the campaign trail.
No, but I'm saying that.
Well, I guess, yeah. Well, I guess my point being, to add in, to Vaz's point, is why does that matter? like, dude, all these politicians say terrible shit all the time. They do, every single one of them. Like, from Obama to Trump, they all say terrible garbage. And my biggest thing is, okay, well, you've got it's like what South Park did with Hillary and Trump. They did a turd sandwich, and it was a fart burger or something ridiculous like that. It's the same thing. It's like having to differentiate between this is nonsense. And whenever they put forward a candidate, so I'll just give you some insight into my end. I think a good candidate, frankly, if people were to take their time, remove biases, and look at this from a logical perspective, I personally think on the right side of it right now, Ron DeSantis is a fantastic candidate. Reason I say that is because he's protecting small businesses within his state. I think that's a major thing. I know you don't like what I'm saying, Solid, and that's okay. Totally fine. But my question is, who else is on the left? Who do you guys have?
Okay. But see, I look at it like this. Who do we have on the left? We don't have anybody. We don't have anybody. But at the same time, on the right, I don't think the right has anyone. I mean, DeSantis is coming out and doing all these things, and
he's better than Trump.
I am watching. He may be better than Trump, but it's like, well, damn. I mean, he still isn't. He's still, it's like.
But that's the whole lesser of two evils thing, right?
We're looking at a better version, right?
The lesser of two evils for you. But for me, I'm looking at this man who is saying slavery. Instead of slavery, we're going to call it involuntary relocation. Seriously?
For what? What do you say that about, just for context?
Slavery. Instead of saying the word slavery, we're going to say involuntary relocation. Come on.
Looking this up.
And at the same time, it's in Florida, where a lot of this stuff is coming from. They want teachers.
So that particular statement's from Texas.
I stand corrected, but even still, involuntary
no, I agree. That's terrible.
And that is coming from a conservative.
Sure.
But once again, it's like I'm looking at, taking DeSantis, some of the things that he's doing in his own state.
Like the Don't Say Gay bill, right?
I'm like, well, even stuff like that, because if you're doing it while you're a governor or a mayor, whatever, what are you going to do when you're top dog?
So to give reference, It's just to be fair, because here's the thing, and this is, I agree with you. I don't think we should wholly jump whole cloth into politicians. I don't think we should be skeptical of them and we should criticize them. They are not our friends, as I've said before. One thing I will say with the Don't Say Gay bill, and I'm going to say this with the mainstream media, it's not called that, one. And two, on both ends of the spectrum within that bill, it's never stated that we can't say gay, and it's never ever once implied that it only has to do with the homosexual agenda. It's specifically to do with just sexual teaching. Even if you're straight, you can't profess to teach a certain way. And so this is back to the mainstream media issue, is a bunch of liberal positions and a bunch of right positions, they miss what the bill is. And they'll go with something like Don't Say Gay. Again, back to a non-falsifiable argument. How would you disagree with the Don't Say? How would you agree with a Don't Say Gay bill? I mean, like that's not true. And so when it comes back to, politicians like Ron DeSantis, either you're for the mainstream media and you're going to kowtow to them, or you're against them and they're going to do whatever they can to destroy you politically because they don't like you. They don't like DeSantis. I will tell you one thing. They don't like DeSantis because he doesn't kowtow to their positions. And I have to tell you, their positions are wrong. Their positions are incorrect.
But it still comes down to the lesser of two evils. I mean, I don't know who the Democrats are going to put up. Hell, it could be somebody's mother.
They might try. They might try Michelle, which I can see maybe happening.
But I don't think it is going. I don't think it is going to be her either. I think that she's like. I think she's done.
Oh God.
But
no. Why Patrick Bateman? There's so many other people.
I'm sorry, did you just say Newsom?
He looks just like. I need to show you. I
don't think Newsom. I think Newsom will run, but I think he's going to wait until 28. If he wins in the fall, which I think that he will, I think he's going to serve out his 6 years, and I think you will see him running in 28. But
he's taken out ads in Florida already.
But in
he
2024,
looks just like Patrick Bateman. That's all I have to say. The guy from American Psycho. He looks just like him.
I'm actually a bit shocked that you guys vote like with your background in conspiracies. Are you? I'm 100% like under the understanding that our vote does not count. They know who the next president is, and the one after that, and probably the one after that. Like you could have 90% of America voting for one person, but they control the numbers on the screen.
And they did not know Trump was coming.
Well, no, I disagree with that. I think that they had indicators that it was coming. I just think the mainstream media didn't want to believe it.
You had indicators when Trump was
Prince Trump.
when Trump was doing the Apprentice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was his trial run.
Well, I think the indicators.
That's what I think. That was his trial run.
Yeah. Well, I think the indicators, though, have to go back to, and people have brought this up ad infinitum, from Tim Pool to, Ben Shapiro to I'm sure Rachel Maddow's probably talked about it, where there was a large disparity of individuals within the middle of America who weren't represented. And they felt like they weren't represented, and they were not represented. So I guess this all comes back to, I agree, Bob. I agree with you. I do agree with you. And the reason I do vote is because I treat it like Christmas. I know Santa doesn't exist. Okay. I know he shows up, and I know the presents that show up are probably from the bull, over here, because he likes me so much, and he gets me presents for Christmas and vice versa. Okay. I understand that, but I still engage because it's fun. Right. And at the end of the day, when I have a future family, I want to be able to say, these things are important. Whether or not they matter doesn't matter to me, because the same thing could be said for cars, right? Why do you get in a car if almost every single death is a car? It doesn't matter then. You just ride a bike. The whole point to me is why not? Why not engage? It's fun. You get the dumb little sticker. People look at you and say, wow, you did something. You didn't really do anything. I mean, you check the box, and, depending on who you talk to, either it went 100% to the vote or it was manipulated by a bunch of lizard skin people. Okay. So
there's something in me that says, like, have some pride and have some standards. Like the whole lesser of two evil argument, it really annoys me, because it's like I know we're getting. I don't want to get into it, but I'll make the comment. So don't. But the whole, Trump said racist comments, but then so did Biden. But yeah, he's the lesser of the two evils. I don't get it, because I would never vote for someone who called me what they called me. I would just not vote. Why would I lower my standards to vote for a man that called me that word?
Mm-hmm.
And then also, the main point I'm going to drive home is, we're feeding the demon. We're feeding them, like, voting. Like, what would happen if all of America or all of the world decided not to vote? Or, again, bringing it back to the mainstream media, what if we decided to turn off our TVs and not tune in and not buy a newspaper, not subscribe to their websites? They would go bust, like if everyone decided. So there is something in me, and I know it's a utopian thing or something that's never going to happen, and I know I'm wasting my breath, but the more people that wake up, that phrase, and decide not to take it for fact and to make their own minds up, the better for everyone.
Well, I think the question I have for you then is, at what point are we talking about the effectiveness of a vote, right? Because from my perspective, I think state and local voting is incredibly important. I think people should put more emphasis on that as opposed to federal voting. I think federal voting is nonsense. I think the president does absolute garbage. He doesn't do anything. Congress has all the power. And when it comes to the legislative aspect of things, right now the popular thing on the judicial end is to treat the Supreme Court as if it's a legislative body. It's not. So this is just a misunderstanding of these positions. I mean, my thing is, like, the president, cool. He's like the spokesperson for Madden. Like, okay, you got Tom Brady on the front of the football game cover, but he's not the guy who created the entire thing. He's just a face. And people tend to put more emphasis on that, in my opinion, by design. So I'm there with you with the effectiveness of the federal vote. It's nonsense. It doesn't matter at all. But when it comes to local voting, the problem is people look at the federal vote and they see that as more important than their local voting. So you got this weird kind of reverse trickle down effect where people don't look at they don't look at the state voting, they don't look at local voting, and you've got terrible circumstances like California that the policies are going to drive people out of business before they give them any prosperity because of that type of problem.
I think the real problem is we put people in positions of power that then dictate the parameters for retaining and gaining that power. Yep. Over and over and over again, whether you're talking about gerrymandering or whether you're talking about the PACs that we were talking about earlier, it doesn't, or whether the fact that you can set, Congress sets their own wages and decides the rules for all of us, right?
What a great deal, right?
I mean, and to Bod's point, if everybody said, let's take a year off, let's not vote in this next election at all. The whole country just says, no vote, none.
Yeah,
it's the same. It's the same argument I used to use with my kids when I said, "Okay, I'm going to turn off that. I'm going to pull the cable. I'm going to turn off that television." And their argument is, "Why? Just don't let me watch the TV show you don't want me to watch." Right? It's the same thing. If we don't want these mass media corporations to own the world, if we don't want these agendas to take place, then you got to turn it off.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether it's us as individuals or whether it's us as a society that we're in this bubble that is so
inundated.
Yeah, not just inundated, but we don't have baseline problems. We're a first world country. Same with the UK. We have first world problems. You hear that kind of saying all the time, but it's true. If you were worrying about how to put food on the table for dinner, you wouldn't turn on Netflix, right? And if you were deciding all these kind of things for your close personal tribe, all those important things were roof over your head, bread on the table, and water. None of this other stuff would matter. But we've got it good. And to keep it good, I don't know if you turn everything off or not. I think it's something we could do.
I don't think it's turning, because this is where I will probably disagree with you, Ba, is I don't think it's turning everything off. That's the answer. I think it's shifting the prism of your perspective, right? So if I'm looking at my locality and I'm saying, how can I make my locale better? The answer is develop community. The answer is get involved in your community and vote for better policies within your immediate to bring a better type of life for those surrounding you and your own personal family. That's the answer. It's always been the answer. And you can see with the disintegration, especially in America, with the disintegration of locale culture, with this disintegration of locale community, with these almost, I wouldn't say invasion, but it sure as hell seems like it sometimes. The invasion of these large conglomerate organizations coming in and saying, no. You don't need the small mom and pop's place on the store. Get your milk for $1.50 from Amazon. Like there's a reason why they're coming in. There's a reason why the inverse is happening on the culture and community side. So when it comes to voting, like, sure, the federal vote's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. But people need to shift that perspective of thinking that it's important and that the president is important and that, somehow voting for whoever is in office at the federal level is important and that the argument of federalism will answer all of our problems. That's clearly not true. I mean, if that's true, you're ignoring a lot of things. We need to shift. We need to shift things back to bringing the power back to people and trusting our fellow American to make decisions that we ourselves would trust ourselves to make. That's the answer. If we don't do that, then we're screwed. Because if we take a break, everything falls apart. Everything falls apart. Because why would you ever come back? It's like the gym. I use the gym as a great example for everything. If you go to the gym for a week and then stop going to the gym, you're never going to go back. It's statistically, it's 9 out of 10 people
totally
will.
true.
Well,
I've gone to the gym and left and gone to the gym. And left.
What I mean by that is you'll never get consistent results, right? So the operating system when it comes to the federal government and when it comes to locale is if we stop engaging, if we just become apathetic, you know what's going to happen? Tyrants are going to get into office. People like, no offense to Patrick Bateman, Gavin Newsom, are going to abuse their powers and force people to do certain things when it's not within their control to be able to do that. We don't live in a monarchy. We don't live under a king. We live from the Constitution's perspective. We live in a very free society where the three things, pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of liberty, and the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, right? Those things are guaranteed to every citizen, and they should be guaranteed to every citizen. And if everyone just opts out of that, why even try anymore? I mean, what's the point? Like, and that's my thing. I just see a lot of apathy lately, and it's concerning, is what it is.
Well, I definitely think that down ballots matter. I will vote for the dog catcher.
Yeah,
seriously, because that dog catcher could one day move up, and next thing you know, he's sitting in the White House. So, but but at the same time, I look at. Okay, let me ask this. And I know this is getting off topic, but if people paid more attention to their state and their city, which they should, do you think it's fair that laws are being written that if the state doesn't like who won on the federal side, they can overturn it?
Well, I think you have to go back to the 10th Amendment.
Okay.
I mean, so that's the answer to that. Is look, the
problem. But the problem is people are not going to. I mean, you look at the Constitution has been crapped on so much.
Sure.
So you think people are really going to go back to the 10th?
Well, I think that's what we should do. Whether people do or not, whether people do or not, obviously has been seen. I think the problem is, look, the argument of everything's falling apart leads people to stop trusting in the things that were put in place. That I love that. Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's probably a lizard. We'll agree. Yeah, it's why not? But I guess my point being is if we stop paying attention to the things that were put in place by a bunch of radical individuals, right? Because America was founded out of radicalism. I mean, we decided to found a country out of taxation. That's insane. That's like all of us getting together and saying, you know what? Screw these high gas taxes. Let's start our own country. That's literally what it came down to. And so for me, whether the person is a lizard in office or not, even though that would be so cool, it's just, blah, like mask comes off. That'd be so cool. I'm a lizard. But whether that's the case or not, we do have to pay attention to these things that protect us and give us rights against the powers that be. And when it comes to the state, if you're not voting in the state and local office, to your point, Solid, yes, people come into office that get power and then they move on to the presidency. So that should be the first point of attack. You can see the same. What was it? What state was it with the school board, the parents with the transgender stuff? Was it Pennsylvania, Virginia? It's the same thing with Virginia. Parents are now discovering in 2022, newsflash, that you can actually affect things if you show up to PTA conferences. You can actually affect things if you decide to vote in a certain way. And that's what people should determine when it comes to state and locale. That should be the first thing. Who cares who the guy is in office? Because the state is supposed to protect you from the abuse of that guy. That's what it's there for. I mean, like, look, people talk about the abortion thing. You brought it up. Do I agree with abortion? No, I don't. But I do think from the perspective of ruling with Roe v. Wade, rare, safe, and legal. I think that's a fair position to have. It's not that today. People celebrate it like it's a freaking party. And that's fine. You know what? You want to do that? That's fine. I don't think that's how we should do it. With that being said, though, if a state like Texas decides to rule in a certain way, you know what they can do? They can overturn that law. That's the beautiful thing about voting, is you can overturn it if you vote. If you don't vote, it stays. It stays the same. And the same thing with partisan voting. If you always vote by party, you're always agreeing with whatever your party is, whether you agree with it or not. I mean,
well, it's about accountability at the end of the day, right?
100%.
And people get into certain offices, whether it's the dog catcher that gets elected every single time or not. They stay in those offices and they have no accountability because everybody decides to vote for the incumbent. Back to what you were saying earlier, Wolf, when you're going through that litany of people that own those media companies. They put so much money toward the incumbents because they don't want things to change.
No,
and when they do want things to change, they want them tilted in the side of what whoever's given the regulations is going to be better for those companies. That's what it comes to. So accountability. There's only one way to hold people accountable in this country, and that's to vote.
Well,
and so
to vote at the state level.
Well, yeah, I'm just talking about voting in general. And I don't agree with you, Wolf, in terms of the feds quite the same. I think all of it's important. I can't say that I've always voted, and I can't say I've always voted for everything. But to Bob's point, I understand being so distrustful of things that you're like, screw this. I ain't voting for anybody anymore. I'm not going to put my credibility on the line for somebody I totally disagree with. Well, my point is it's not about disagreeing with the individual. It's about taking things and saying, okay, I've used this word in our podcast many times. I'm an incrementalist. I like to move things. It's the old adage, if you're a pilot, you set a course to go from here to Japan.
Yeah.
Along that course, you have to correct course corrections along the way. That's incrementalism. That's not burning it down and starting over and decide you're flying west to Japan. No, I want to go east. I'm going to go east to Japan now. No, don't do that. Being incrementalist, change things a little bit at a time. And the only way to do that is to start talking about these things and changing one mind at a time.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I can say, I've said this before many times, is I believe in the Bible, and I believe that God is so disappointed that he just needs to come down and just get rid of everybody. And he needs to start over and put animals at the top and put humans at the bottom, because no matter what party you're in, no matter who you are, as humans, we have just messed up so much.
He tried to do that once.
The Bible,
he said floods, right?
Well, yeah, and you're right. And he came back with more humans like us.
Well, didn't the Bible specifically talk about being a good steward? I mean,
yes,
you be a good steward of the world, and that's the big thing about Christianity. To touch on the thing, you can't do something that you don't know, right? You can't be better if you don't know what the better alternative is. And when it comes to theology, if you don't hear the message of being a good steward, you're going to think Christians are insane. I mean, that's the alternative, right?
But a lot of Christians are. Before we keep going, are you guys good on time?
Oh yeah, I'm good.
Okay. I see what cast is there. And usually when we get to a certain part, we usually invite if someone wants to come in. So what cast, if you would like to come in, because I know I've listened to your things and I know you have things to say. So I'm going to send the link to you if you want to come in and join the conversation.
Can I do you guys have anything else to share? I'll just ask you that first and foremost. And then if not, maybe as a last kind of segment, I would like to have rattled off some instances. This is just how I think. I'd like to pinpoint some examples of where the media have lied and we've exposed them. I would like to touch upon, and we don't need to go into it greatly, but like the Ukraine-Russia thing, some of the footage that we've seen over the last few months is obviously, it's been debunked. The footage of the soldiers with the wooden guns or something, and then the ones where like there's drone strikes, but clearly they're from like 2015 or 16. They were used again to say it was like now. And then obviously the last 2 years with COVID, where the media have obviously lied and said that, people who are asymptomatic can't spread it. You'll only have to take one shot, or all these lies that have been, and how they are able to wangle themselves out of it. And I bring it back. My finishing statement when it gets to that is always going to be holding them accountable, because when you don't check that behavior, whether it's a huge multi-million-pound organization or a single person, you're opening yourself up to accepting less, and that's what I always say. And I don't, I'm not sitting here on my high horse acting as if I don't consume anything or I don't do anything wrong or anything like that. But if we all stood up against lies first and foremost, I think it's obvious we would have a better life. Like I hate living in this world with that we accept this crap, this demoralization, and that's what they're doing. When you go onto Twitter and you click on the trending, in my mind, I see that's what they want us to talk about.
Yeah.
Whether it's Roe v. Wade, whether it's Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, whether it's Chris Rock and Will Smith, that's what they want you to talk about. And usually it's to promote something. Like I'll finish off with a little agenda, a little conspiracy theory that I heard. It was just a little TikTok and it was a funny one, but it makes you think. And I think it'll show people how I think the media work. And it was one of the major companies that are very predominant right now. I won't say for obvious reasons, but you'll know them. They're very predominant right now. Are on the verge of bringing us an alopecia aid, medicine that can help fix alopecia. Now, they still need funding and they need to get that out there. How would they do it? Well, this guy believes that the whole Chris Rock, Will Smith thing was to get that into the mainstream so that people start talking about alopecia. And then, oh, look, we've just discovered that we've got this alopecia. That is how they work. So if they want an agenda to happen, what they'll do is start stories in the media to get people arguing on Twitter and Facebook. And then it's like, well, the media's got the antidote. They've got and usually when you look into those companies, it's someone that's, high up, linked, like multimillionaire, and there's invested interest. So that's the only thing. I liked what you said there about, changing your mindset rather than turning off the TV. I do agree with that, because Solid always says, like, I went to watch the latest Batman movie, and she was like, oh, so you do go and watch films? And I was like, yeah, but see, when I'm watching it, I'm also seeing what they want to promote. There was a scene in it, not ruining it, but where Catwoman says to Batman, oh, these white privileged assholes in Gotham. And I'm like, and my wife, she's not into conspiracy theories, but she's awake enough to see, I've taught her enough. And we both are sitting in the cinema and we're like this.
Yeah. No, I did the same thing.
It's like you're opening your mind to it. You see the agenda, you know what the world's going to look like in 5-10 years. And when you see that, that's a great ability, because then you can watch the news and see what they're trying to do to you.
Yeah.
And that's,
and Bob, what I also said about the whole Batman thing is, I mean, I've sat and people have and you're watching a movie or a show and they say something, you're like, really? But at the same time, what I was saying to you is, and I asked you this and you said no. I said, can you just go and watch a movie and just watch it and enjoy it without going, there's a conspiracy here? I mean, because to me, it's like, I think that's kind of sad.
But we've been jaded. I think that's the problem. We're all have our eyes open looking for that stuff.
Yeah, well,
it's like the mechanical birds.
Yeah, but if I'm watching a movie, if it's making me cry, I don't care what they said. I'm sitting there boo-hooing.
Well, I think it depends. Yeah, I think it depends on how much, right? So a good way I can look at it, I don't know if you guys saw the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. I saw that it kind of flew under the radar. It has like a 95% Rotten Tomatoes. I would recommend seeing it because it will make you cry. But it also had some like woke positions in it, but it wasn't preaching. Like it had a few woke things, a few characters were a certain way, and then it just left it as that. And for me, I did the same thing when I saw Batman. I was like, really? Okay. I mean, it is coming from a very attractive woman. I mean, whatever. I mean, she's great. So it sounds really nice. She's a great actress. But at the same time, like those type of things, I pick up too. And not because I think everything is tied together, even though back in my mind, I'm pretty sure it is. But because, like I said earlier, the best way to conquer someone is to divide people. White people, black people, people who are of all different minorities. When we bond together and when we're on the same side, good things happen. When we're not, it's easy to take us over. I mean, like if you're looking at your citizen, your fellow American citizen, whatever demographic they are, and you're skeptical of them, it's really easy to get you to do some ridiculous things. It really is. It doesn't take a lot of pushing. And for me, like you look at 2020 with all the peaceful protesting, like you think that if those people didn't have skeptical positions, you think they would have gone out and done that? I don't think so.
But at the same time, You want to talk about 2020, and you
Mhm.
know and Bob knows I'm gonna say it. I can bring
That's
up January 6th.
Sure.
I
know,
I
But I
find
think we
it
talk about
interesting.
disparities, right?
Right,
Yeah.
but I also find it interesting that during that whole time that everything was supposedly going on,
Sure.
Fox News didn't.
But can I ask a question?
Every other place around the world was
Do you know when Fox News was acquired by Disney, a really left-leaning company, in 2019? So my whole point
but
being, if they own that company, they're going to control what that company says, right? So if you
right,
can
but
create, well, go ahead.
okay, but at the same time, is if it's news,
Mhm.
it should have been on.
Yeah, and I agree
I
with
hear you, but
then-
it's
but
not.
then you-
It's not
then you-
news, though. That's
Right,
the whole
okay,
point.
but then you can't come back and say, like Fox did, Tucker
Mhm.
Carlson had a big push that was Antifa and BLM, which was a blatant lie.
I mean, you have to look at the reporting of Andy No. I mean, you look at who's on the ground, right? So you look at
Right.
mainstream media. So Andy No has been demonized by mainstream media. He was at almost every single riot at that point in time. You look at Elijah Schaefer from Slightly Offensive. He was at almost every single riot at that point in time, specifically in Minnesota. The individuals who are on the ground reporting this stuff are the people we should be paying attention to, not the mainstream media. Because the mainstream media is owned by 6 major left-leaning organizations that are only going to say certain things to appeal to
Now,
their base.
But
And that
go
if
back-
includes on
people-
Fox News, right?
But if people are going to watch it,
Mhm.
then I mean, okay, put it like this: you can't put out there that is BLM and Antifa, which happens not a group, it's a thought. If you put it out there that it was them, then how come you weren't showing BLM? I mean, if they were so horrible, how come you weren't showing it?
Well, it's the
Because
same.
there was no one to see.
The same can be said about any conspiracy theory. I mean, you look at the Red Scare in the 50s. Like, you're going to say something and you're going to say, okay, well, this is what's happening, but we're not going to really show you what's going on. So you can say Antifa and BLM are a thought, right? How did
not BLM.
well, Antifa. You can say Antifa is a thought. Why are there locations within every city? You can find them and contact them. I mean, if it's a thought, there wouldn't be organizations, right? If it's a thought, there wouldn't be damages in 2020. I'm not going to blame BLM for all that, because I would say that what ended up happening is there was probably peaceful protesting going on. And then at a certain point in night, people who were part of Antifa, who also affiliated with BLM and some other organizations, came out and said, okay, time to destroy. That's what I think would happen. And the reason organizations like CNN and Fox and all those people reported in a certain way they did is because they don't want it to reflect poorly upon them. Because as far as I can remember, the most commonly said thing at that time was, you know what? I don't agree with what they're saying, but I can see where they're coming from. That's the most couched version of agreement I've ever heard in my entire life. I don't agree with what Ted Bundy was doing, but I can see where he was coming from. I mean, you can apply it to literally anything. I mean, I can say that thing and then excuse the decisions of people who I don't agree with.
I think you nailed it right there. You're excusing the decisions.
I am about to say this because I can see where before the show started, I said I don't agree with what a lot of things that BLM does, but I can see where they're coming from. Just like with the civil rights, you had people who did not believe that people should get on a bus and go and they should protest whatever, but I can see where they're coming from because I live that life.
Sure. And we're not disproving that. I think so
this is what I'm saying. So when people say I can see where they're coming from, some people really can see and understand what other people don't.
I think you can see where it's coming from. The problem is there's a line of demarcation between peaceful protesting and conflating into something greater than
that. Yes, absolutely. I mean, was 2020 all? Please, there were riots, they were burning down stuff. Absolutely.
But once you go over that line, what do you say then?
Right.
You can't then say what you're saying. You can't say,
here's what
I can see where they're coming from if they're doing something.
No, I know. I'm not saying that I can
see
where they're coming from them burning down stuff.
Yeah.
I'm saying I can see where the protests, what they were
100%.
fighting from is coming from. I'm not saying that, no. Of course
okay,
not.
Can you say the same thing about January 6th?
I can say this about January 6th. No, I cannot see where they're coming from because they went in there.
I'm not talking about the people that went in.
No.
I'm talking about the huge
people
group of
people
that have been demonized because they were in Washington at the time.
About 50% of the country.
Talking about I am specifically talking about the people that went in. Now,
I agree with you there.
For the people who were at the rally, and if they were just saying, you know, we want to have fair this and we want this, whatever. Yes, I can see
Right.
where they're coming from. But when they take it to that next level, you have
Totally in
lost.
agreement with you.
Well,
Totally.
So once again, so when I say that I can see where the protesters are coming from, I can see where they're coming from. But when they took it to that next level, you lost me. When the January 6th people were standing there, okay, I can totally understand it. But when you all took it to that next level,
Right.
you lost me.
So can I posit something that I think is probably likely? You've got the riots in 2020
Mhm.
and you have the January 6th stuff. Okay.
Mhm.
So a bunch of people saw that protesting works, right? They saw that from the civil rights movement, so they decided to do it in 2020. They got together and said, let's ban arms. We don't like what happened to George Floyd. We don't like what happened to some of the people prior to that. We don't like these things going on. And then, as I said a little bit ago, some group of people said, okay, well, this is an advantageous moment that we can take advantage of. We can call ourselves Antifa, but we can say we're an idea. We can be funded entirely by the CIA because we're a bunch of crackheads and drug addicts and homeless people that you can't track at all. And we're going to do all of this, and no one's going to be able to track it. And then we're going to disappear every election cycle. Come January 6th, a bunch of far-right guys, the bros, as they're referred to, came and went to Washington, D.C., and they got all angry. And then a small segment of those people, much like with BLM, a small segment of people who are also Antifa, decided to go into the Capitol. What's funny about that is I remember in 2020 when people went to the Capitol, everyone's talking about January 6th, and now we're talking about it still 2 years later. In 2019, there was actually a women's march that went to the Capitol. Where were they? Why is no one prosecuting them? They did the same thing. So my whole point being is if we're going to have this line, right, of destroying citizens, like destroying cities, because that's what happened in 2020, and then walking into the Capitol and taking a poop on Nancy Pelosi.
This goes right back to
they're not the same.
This goes back to communication, goes to the media, in the agenda, in which way it leans, and the bias you're looking for, and who decides what to say about what.
It also goes back to the adverse effect. What happened on January 6th? Joe Biden became president. He became the president of the United States.
I mean, well, yeah,
he's still president.
They
one guy died.
Yeah.
One guy died from a heart attack, apparently. Maybe that might be different, but that's what I heard. Some dude died and a few other security guards ended their lives afterwards. Kind of speculation. No one's really sure what happened. There seems to be one guy that people think was like, there's video evidence. Ba knows about this. Video evidence of one dude kind of calling action. People assume he might have been the FBI or CIA plant. I don't know because I didn't look that deep into it. So that happened, right? One person passed away and democracy ensued. 2020 riots, $4 billion worth of damage, multiple minority neighborhoods destroyed, multiple deaths, police officers and organizations destroyed to the point where people don't trust them anymore on both sides and they don't think they should be funded. Entire organization of individuals who claim to be an idea decided to go around the country and destroy things in the name of whatever they think that the future holds, because they have no answer. If Antifa had a good answer, I'd be sitting listening to them, but they haven't presented one. They just say, okay, well, we need to destroy everything. That's not an answer. That's a toddler's answer.
But at the same time, the other side, do they have an answer too? I mean,
no, not at all. I think both are bad, but I think the disparity, like the extremes, are what's different. That's like me comparing NFL football to Pop Warner. They're not the same.
No,
they're both football.
Right.
They're both football. Like both those things are bad, but the result is not the same. No one has been brought to. Oh, actually, that's not true. Some people have been brought to the judicial system and the effects of justice after the 2020 riots, mostly in Portland and mostly in Seattle. Okay, those cities were basically taken over. They might have been just political coups, frankly. So people have seen repercussions, but for the most part, $4 billion of damage, I don't see a lot of people getting tied into that, and I don't see any ramifications for the major mainstream organizations that use the very phrase of, you know what, we don't agree with this, but we can see where they're coming from. That's if you did that with a toddler,
it's not about doing what's right. It's
if you did that,
pragmatic for those companies that own all this.
Sure, but if you did that for a toddler, you know what they would do is they become a terrible person. If little Billy decided to, throw his cat down a well and the cat drowns, and then you say to the kid, you know what, I don't agree with what you did, but I think, I can see where you're coming from. The kid's gonna think it's okay.
But the thing about it is when you say, or when I say that I can see where they're coming from,
you're looking at it from a certain light.
Right. And that is, and that's what I want to make sure Bob understands.
Yes,
so
100%.
Seriously, that is where I am, that's where I am looking at it. So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But for me,
well, you're also
I'm
not
looking
CNN.
at it from the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah. And so I agree with where you're coming from. I think your position's fine. you're just not CNN. Like CNN shouldn't be saying that. Like Fox News shouldn't be saying that. ABC should not be saying that. Times should not be saying that. WAPO should not be saying those things. They should be saying, this has turned into a riot, and this is violent, and it's destroying cities, and it's destroying minority communities that are never going to come back from this. We don't agree with it. That's what they should be saying. Whether it's down to the Democrat individual or the Republican individual, what you guys say doesn't matter. You don't have tens of millions of people. I mean, hopefully one day. I mean, fingers crossed, like tens of millions of people listening. But it's most people, the average Joe doesn't. And they shouldn't be saying that, because all it does is creates an echo chamber of people saying something that's just, it's incorrect. Like, we have to be able to determine what is acceptable when it comes to political action and what is not acceptable when it comes to political violence. There has to be a distinguishing factor, or the Proud Boys become Antifa. Say. Let me suggest something.
I think
say
the
Trump
Proud Boys
runs.
Already have. I mean, I think all of these organizations already, either
100%.
The far left,
They're radicalized.
You know, Black people who I know, I know some who are like, ooh, you need to go somewhere. And
they need to touch grass, as the kids say.
And I've heard some from the far right where I'm like, okay, so I know I'm in the middle, but again, a lot of my points come from my personal experience.
100%. Yeah. And I think the distinguishing factor because I, like I said, I want to distinguish. I do agree with your position because you've experienced it. What I see today is people my age who have not experienced things like that saying that they understand. I've never experienced that type of level of racism up until 2020 and 2021 and beyond. I have not experienced that type of stuff up until just very recently. So for me to say, I remember when I was 12 years old and I experienced the civil rights movement, doesn't make any sense. It makes no logical sense. I can't relate to that. I can't empathize through it because I have not experienced it. I can sympathize with it. I can learn from it historically. But for me to go out and riot in the streets because I think this is a regurgitation of the civil rights movement is just, it's outright wrong. It's statistically, factually wrong. I mean, when BLM happened, just for insight, I didn't post a black square. I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything about Proud Boys. It does really sound like the least scary group ever. It's like it's the Powerpuff Girls. But I didn't say any of those things because I want to wait and see what the result is. And the result of the rioting and the not the protesting, the rioting of the BLM movement was destruction. The result of protesting was massive amounts of income.
Do you think the media push the violence?
100%.
Okay.
I don't think they push it. I think they do the same thing a Trump tweet does, right? It's you might point out fake news, but if you tweet about it constantly, you're exacerbating the problem. And the media is the same way. You might point out that Portland's on fire, but if you don't point out that it's a bad thing that it's on fire, then you're exacerbating the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes back to the fact that a lot of mainstream organizations are filled with activists. There's a differentiating factor between journalists and activists. Mm-hmm. Journalists can separate themselves from the experience, and activists can't separate. They can't separate emotion. And what I mean by that is not that they can't feel emotion, but they choose to go the emotional route first, as opposed to the logical route first.
So, do you think that I'm just going to look at cable news? If all cable news just stopped, and people had to rely on their local news. Yeah. Do you think that would be a difference of how the country or the world works?
Well, I think it depends.
People would see things, or
I think it depends. I think because I don't think anyone's calling. Like, I'm definitely not calling for innately. I'm not calling for the dissolution of mainstream media. I think they just need to do what we need to do with the border. They need to reform. They need to figure something out, or things are going to get worse. And it's a lot of work. And politicians, and organizations oftentimes don't like reforming because it's a lot of work. It requires them to do their job.
It's easier to sensationalize everything.
100%.
And more clicks and more likes and more readership and more subscriptions and more whatever the agenda is for those that own these companies. That's the easier thing. And that's the way this business proposition is set up in this country. That's the way the politics are set up. That's why everything we talk about today is politicized. We can call it different things, but it all falls in the same category. If you look at the Congress of the United States, and I'm not looking at it right now, but go to Pew or Real Clear Politics or something like that, where it's just graphs and charts and numbers and things like that. You'll see that the approval rating for Congress is, it's below freezing.
It's dismal. Dismal.
Well, that's the media's.
Can I ask a question? I'll ask Solid first. I'd like to know your feeling. Do you believe that the media are allowed to report on anything they want to? Do you think they report to anyone, or basically who's higher, like the government, the media, who controls who? What would you say to that?
Okay, I'm sorry. I lost you. You're saying that if they
No, who do you think the media can report whatever they like, or do you think they are regulated by the government, or do you think the government's higher than the, well, do you think the media is higher than the government, or the government's higher than the media?
the way it appears,
Mhm.
it appears the media is higher than the government just because they are, it seems like that they can, report whatever they want. And that's basically what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think that the media is reporting, whatever they want. But at the same time, when I look at the media, I'm looking at it as the whole. I'm just not looking at the Rachels and the Tuckers, everything like that. I'm also looking at those people who have podcasts. I'm looking at the people who, when you go and you post your, videos, whatever, all of that to me is the media. And that's what scares me, that even though the media as we have it now needs a total overhaul,
Mhm.
I still don't want some of these other little people who are posting whatever, that if they become mainstream,
Mhm.
some of these people are posting some really dangerous stuff.
So can I ask something?
So again, what do you do?
If an organization, so I'll use the Daily Wire as a good example because they're really growing really fast. If they come out and they can't claim and they say openly that, hey, we're a conservative organization, we're going to lean conservatively, and they grow to the point of something like CNN or Fox News, is that not a good thing?
It's a good thing if they can report things that are true and not
Sure.
sensationalize things.
Sure. So if they so I guess so then if that's the case, then you and I agree. If we can reform certain things to the point where someone comes in and the news, as what Cass is saying, would just report the news, but they would say their bias, then the problem for the most part, in my opinion, is that we'd get past the point where we are now. This sick cycle of nonsense garbage reporting that is so biased on both ends that it's almost intolerable. Because if I sit down and I watch someone like Don Lemon and they say, hey, look, I'm Don Lemon, I am left-leaning, and the positions I'm going to take are left-leaning, problem solved. I'll listen to Don Lemon. I probably won't agree with some of his biased positions, but I can distinguish between where his bias lies and where the truth is. Same thing with Daily Wire. Right. If Ben Shapiro comes out and has his little moment and comes out and talks about something and says, look, I'm a conservative individual and I'm a libertarian and I sit with this, then I can see where his bias is and I can distinguish. If that's a problem, if that's the thing that people do, and that solves the issue. I would rather they do that than have this almost zombie-like entity,
But that's what they should do, and that's 100%. The problem, with Ben Shapiro. It's like, not just him, but even with a lot of left-leaning stuff. Like I said, people send so much stuff to me, and I have this one follower on TikTok who is so progressive and so far left, and some of the things that she sends me, it's like sometimes I'm tempted to post it, but I don't want to do that because all it's doing is just riling people up, and I don't think you should do that. And I have responded to her in messages like, seriously, or whatever. But at the same time, I see something that's all the way on the far right that's doing the same thing that she's doing.
I think there's something we're forgetting here, and that's that most of these people that are in these media positions to give us their version of the news do not think of themselves as far left or far right.
Exactly.
They think of themselves as just plain right.
Or they intentionally disguise it.
Well, there's certainly an element to that. Yes. For agenda purposes, for whatever's quote unquote behind the curtain. But when somebody thinks they're right, how can you convince them to take on the moniker of blue or red? Right.
And that's why when Bob and I are going at it consistently, and I will just say, you know what, I'm done, whatever. He pushes, I'm serious. I mean, it's like, at what point, because for me, it's like, if you just keep saying something, and if you know that I'm not going to budge, or if I know that you're not going to budge, it's wasting my time.
Well, two things I
am done.
Yeah.
Well, Soldier, I solid. The one thing you said earlier is that you would never vote for a Republican, right? I would bet, based on just knowing you the short time I have, that'll change. And not because it's Republican versus Democrat or anything like that, but it's because you will find someone. We use Tulsi Gabbard as an example on the left. If you can see both sides of an issue, sooner or later, you will fall on one side or the other because you're a sensible, logical person. And Ba, you said earlier that you would never vote, period. Not so sure about that.
No, I'll never vote.
Well, guys, I have news. I'm never voting again. I'm done. I'm never talking politics.
Yeah, and Bull, I understand, and you have a point, I'm gonna tell you, if I vote Republican, I will come out on this platform and I will call you and say, hey, I voted, yes, I did. But for both, you just look at the people who are just out there, because again, when all those Republicans stood up on that stage in 2015, I think there were like terrible. About 16 of them. I was like, seriously, is this what you all have? And
bro, who's the guy that looked like a turtle? Who was that guy? He had like glasses. He looked like a turtle. It wasn't Mitch McConnell. It was
Ryan? What's his name's father?
Well, there was Trump and there was Rubio and then some dude that looked like a turtle, and I can't remember his name. And
that was what's his face's father.
The guy that was the governor of Texas.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm looking it up.
But then again, in 2019, when you had 20 Democrats get up on stage, my sister and I were like,
"Show it's a prom, right?"
We're like, really? Is this what you have? I mean, seriously, And then when Bloomberg had pushed himself up and took out all these ads. And on that debate night, when he opened up his mouth, I was like, good Lord, good Lord. Seriously. So,
Bernie will run again, I'm sure. He needs his bank balance topped up. So,
yeah, he's so old though,
but
man.
Bernie is I think 3 months younger than Biden. So,
God.
I was thinking of Jeb. I was thinking of Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush.
The Bushes are done. The Bushes are done. The
question is, are the Clintons
are done? The Clintons are done. I mean,
no. Hillary will be 104, dude. She'll come out.
She's got 4 hard drives in the bathroom just waiting.
If she were going to run, I think she would have done it this time. She's. I mean, we do need new blood. I mean, no matter, and if you're 80 years old, and if you can stand up there and not fall over, but I mean, I'm just saying,
does anybody at 80 years old really want to have the responsibility that these guys have
out there? For me, who is out there? Because I don't care what side you're looking at, and I'm just like, Lord, please just put somebody up there that I can please just happily vote for.
Well, you should. I'll be your vice president.
My sister has she has pushed me for years to run. And when I was in Chicago, because that is where I grew up, when I grew up, it was nothing the way it is now. Mm-hmm. I wanted to run as an alderman. I was into politics. I knew Chicago politics left and right. And my sister was like, you should run. And my father said, if you run, you'll be dead within a week, because your mouth will get you into trouble, because you don't know when to stop, because you will call this person out, you'll call that person out. And in Chicago, you cannot do that, because it is known that people who have run, even recently, they kind of go away and you never see them.
I think that would happen to me. If I ran, I would get in so much trouble.
I would love to run. I mean, but I know that I would piss a lot of people off.
Well, actually, nowadays that's kind of the thing people are looking for anyway. So you might
probably do run.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I saw this
skeletons in their closet and nothing to say about anything. Don't get anywhere.
Well, I saw this, like, I don't know how true it was, but I saw this little clip of the founding fathers on Instagram that said their ages when they founded the United States. And like almost all of them were like in their early 20s. So, I mean, my view, not to say that we should have 20-year-olds being president, but I just mean, like, honestly, I think it's we definitely need to change things, because if I keep seeing someone who's from the elderly home up there, I'm gonna yeet myself out of existence. I'll yeet myself.
Do you really want someone that is about ready to turn 35 later this year, right? Or right?
Yeah,
No, right.
you have to be 35 to run.
That's
for
fine.
president. Yeah,
35 is fine. I think that's enough lifetime.
And that's fine. But the one of the late night shows was asking AOC about this.
Oh God.
God, that's what I said. Oh my God, really?
Were you talking about if she was going to run?
Oh, yeah, I forget what show it was, but they asked her this a month ago, something like that. And I went, please, God, no, don't do it. But the fact is that type of person has a reach that people like myself truly don't understand. I mean, the social media stuff, as interesting it is to me, I see these things as tools, and other people see them as their meta life, right?
Hey, you don't need to be so negative. You don't need to be so negative, okay? I won't be able to exist without my TikTok and Twitter and Insta tweet, all right? I can't exist without that. What are you talking about? Who am I without Instagram?
Exactly.
Well, none of it matters because your next president is already decided. And if you want to know who it is, it's Donald Trump again. And it's not Dwayne.
No!
It is.
You want to see some more disruptive.
Well, who's his VP? Is it DeSantis?
I don't know, but I know it's set in stone. It's like he's on the golf course and he's saying on the tee, your 45th president. He turns and goes, and 47th, and it's all set in stone. When you guys have done the Skull and Bones, the Freemason stuff. It's pre-written, even in the local level. I was going to jump in there. There's a girl on Podbean that I've been listening to her show, and she ran for, I think it was Nevada, for the mayor or whatever it is. I'm not even sure the term, but I've been listening to her show, and I really like what she's got to say. And obviously that's run its course now. She didn't win, and I was listening to her show on Thursday night there, and she was saying that the person who's been in is won and all that. And she says, but I spent $600 on my campaign, and the people that spent hundreds of thousands and all that. And then I asked her about the whole secrets, like the Freemason kind of thing. And she goes, oh yeah. And she's someone who is not into this stuff at all. But when I wrote, listen, I'm a Downey, I think it's all predetermined. I think it's people who are in these secret societies. And she went, oh yeah, when we were going to our rallies, and it was like everyone was saying, oh, he's in the Freemason, so he'll probably get it. It's like openly talked about. So I know this is like, but you'll see when Trump becomes president again, you'll all remember this moment.
Bob, when I eventually sign up for the Freemasons,
will
you join me? We could infiltrate them. We could take them over. We can make them a good organization.
You're fine until you get to level 13.
Yeah, it'll be like the inverse version of the ACLU. You and I can take it over. It'll be great. It'll be a good time. It'll be great.
I want to comment that someone who listens to us, Sava, she asked a random question. I'm not sure where this question is coming from, but since we're talking about people who you would vote for, whatever, I'm going to ask Wolf, would you?
Oh boy, you had to ask Wolf that, did you?
So, random question: if you're in the hospital, would you feel comfortable being treated by a nurse that in their free time like to wear diapers and act like a baby? And I'm going to add on to that is if this person were running for president or any office, they were in their free time. That's what they did. Did it really matter if their policies or whatever? So you want to take on the nurse thing first? Or?
So you're telling me Joe Biden's giving me my nurse? Honestly, boy. I would be totally comfortable for it, but I would request if I say I'm in the hospital, I'm comatose, and I wake up and someone shows up and they've got like nurse clothes on, and I learn somehow in their spare time that they wear diapers. I would honestly request them to wear the diapers in front of me. That's what I would want. I don't want them to wear it in their spare time. I want them to wear it at the hospital.
Come on with the diaper.
Okay, so
be honest, be open, be free.
So if it were a politician running for whatever office,
Ted Cruz,
and they like to wear diapers and what have you, or they like to dress up in women's clothes or whatever.
Yeah, why not?
So you're saying that when they gave their speech, they should be up there in a diaper.
Yeah. And here's the thing. You want to know why I say that is because I care more about their policy than I care about what they do. Because I know Joe Biden has the children, as I said earlier, he touches his hairy legs, and then Donald Trump is grabbing women by their whatever. And you know what? People were okay with that. I honestly think that they should, to switch everything up to make it really enjoyable, we should switch everything up and make the policies less important and the things that they've done wrong more important. And who's doing the more wrong things, we should go with. I think that would actually be way more interesting.
I just think we should stop deifying all these people.
100%.
Period.
Yeah.
And they're human beings, some of which wear diapers, some of which wear dresses, some of which, well, I won't even
You
go
know
in
what?
this way.
Diapers, Huggies, depends. You know what? We're all going to be there one day. Okay.
Oh,
Do you want to do closing statements? Because it's been a great
Yeah.
chat. I'm getting pretty hungry.
Yeah.
So just your finishing statements on the media and
Yeah,
you both.
Yeah, I'll just start us off. I think that I don't think the legacy media is in a death throw. I don't. I think it's modifying, it's changing, it's adapting, it's evolving, if you will, to meet the needs of a new generation or multiple generations, new technologies, et cetera. And I think the problem comes in where you have, as Wolf was discussing earlier, you have so few people and so few businesses owning the rights to communicate. And I think that's why we should continue to push the kind of platforms and the kind of communication that we're doing right here. Because this is the new media. It truly is. What it'll turn into, I don't have a crystal ball, clear enough to show me that. But what I can tell you is that the legacy media is all about trying to draw your trust into something for something that's hidden behind the curtain. And we got to stop looking at that. We got to stop giving that our attention. Instead, focus it on individual decision making. And as I think, Solid, you were talking about earlier, making those decisions important for yourself. I forget the term you used, but that's the key to this. Use your own brain, use your own logic to make these decisions, and then come together with like-minded people, but listen openly to others.
Awesome.
I think I probably, I'm going to disagree with you, Bull. I do think that the mainstream media, well, I always do, just by virtue, I'm contrarian. I think the mainstream media has failed. And I don't think they're dead. I think they're going to reform. I think they should reform. But I think right now the state that they're in is total failure. It can be seen in viewing metrics. It can be seen in trust. I had a little thing that I never got to, but we can talk about that at a later time. But the American people don't trust the mainstream media. And I think in order for them to survive, they're going to have to change. And people are going to have to learn that everyone who's a main spokesperson in the mainstream media is a lizard person. And they're going to have to reveal themselves, damn it. But I think the best way for people to supersede the negative effects of the mainstream media right now is to, maybe to Boz's point, maybe remove themselves a little bit and then focus on their community, focus on the people around them. Stop distrusting your neighbor. Stop looking at people as if they're on the other end of the spectrum, you can't work with them and you can't compromise. The beauty of this country is compromise. The beauty of this country is working together. And the mainstream media right now, unfortunately, is an impediment to that. And I think the best way people can get past this and for us to grow as a country, because right now we're in some teenage growing pains right now, is to remove the bias and the tribalism and the hyperbolic nature that is presented by the mainstream media, get back to grassroots activism when it comes to locale and community and developing relationships. And if you need to inform yourself by reading, so you can differentiate between the media's bias and what's actually fact.
Okay. Well, I think the media is necessary. I do think that they need to reform, but I think getting rid of the media, the mainstream media, totally is going to just open it up for somebody else or some other people to come in and take their place, and we're going to be in the same spot. So, but I will say this. I have enjoyed you guys. I really have. And I hope to bring you guys back again. I already have a couple of topics that I'm going to talk to Bob about that I think that you guys would want to jump in on. But I like the fact that you all push back on me and I push back on you, whatever. But it is just about, like you said, listening to other people's views.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Couldn't agree more.
For me, I've got a few points I've written down just quickly to touch on. Fact checkers, censorship, those were 2 points that I would have liked to have touched on throughout the episode. But I mean, the famous saying I always hear is the fact checkers only came out when the truth started getting out. And even the censorship, I mean, I have no hope for this episode, by the way, but we can still rip it and put it onto BitChute and other places, but YouTube will definitely ban it for one reason. And I don't know if you know why. It'll be because we touched on, we spoke a bit about the 2020 election and that word stolen. And I think that's an instant. We've already had an episode that was removed for that. And like I say, but that's no problem. I would rather have these chats and we can put it elsewhere. And that's the beauty of the world today, the free market, capitalist society, where you have BitChute, you have Rumble, you have all these other places that we can put our business to. And that's the whole message for me around the media is the CNNs, the BBCs, the Fox News, they're not going to report the truth if it doesn't give them, like if it's all about the money, it's all about the power. So they're not going to tell you the truth if it affects their pocket and their power. And again, everything that Wolf and Bull have said, I echo that. It's like the reading, the podcast, listen to alternative media, get as much sides of it, do your own research. I mean, that's a famous conspiracy theorist said is do your own research. And then my main point to drive home about the media is regulation and hold them accountable. And I mean, hold them accountable by heavy fines and maybe even like sack. Like if I lie on my CV to get a job, I get sacked. If I do something wrong, if I scrap a job at work, I get a verbal warning, written warning, and then I'm out the door. These government officials, presidents, mayors, media, they all can lie to us and still keep their job because it's the familiar face, and we all get to like the Don Lemons and the Anderson Coopers. There's a reason why they make their money, is because they're giving you their opinion and they're a good face, to watch and listen to. So again, I think this is first and foremost been a really great episode. I've enjoyed listening to the Wolf and Bull again, and I echo what Solid said. We will definitely be asking you guys back. So thanks again, and I hope everyone's enjoyed it in the chat. And this episode should go out probably 2 days' time. I'll get the editing done because it's going to be a big file. So, but as always, thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.
And hold on. I just want to say one thing, that I have noticed that for whatever reason, our friendly differences on YouTube, we're getting more and more views on the reload or whatever when you record it. So on the non-lives, I'll put it like that. So
it's because Bull looks so pretty.
Yeah, well, one of us
really did your hair today.
Yeah, it took me a while to get it in place.
In the stream.
Oh, wait. Well, actually, let the Wolf and Bull promote their show.
Yes. Please promote.
Fire away, Wolfie.
Yeah, you guys can follow us on Instagram at the Wolf and Bull. You can also, we have a website, wolfandbull.com. We also have a sister brand, History Out of the Box. We talk about historical figures. It's myself and my beautiful partner in crime, Jen, also referred to as Beowulf, who is a resident guest on the Wolf and Bull. We are on, I'm pretty sure on most major podcasts platforms, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Amazon Music, and Spotify. So yeah, go ahead and give us a listen.
Do you stream live?
We have YouTube videos. We haven't done it live yet. No. Okay. So we're getting there. Okay. We're working our way towards it. But on
YouTube, you're Wolf and Bull.
The Wolf and Bull, yeah.
The Wolf and Bull. Okay. Yep. All right.
Yeah. So we push episodes out every week. So
awesome.
All right. Well,
thanks a lot, guys.
And thank you guys who are listening over on YouTube, Facebook, or wherever. Bye.
All right.